Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode number 58 of the Pika Serenity podcast. We are back after a kind of short hiatus. Joining us, as always, we have myself, Hamilton, and my co host in the top left, Anomaly.
Hello.
And joining us this week to talk about patch 9.0.5 and what that means for monks, and in particular for Windwalkers, we have Babylonius, who I don't
Hello.
think really needs much of an introduction.
No, I do. Why don't you give me like a full, synopsis of an intro?
So Babs is the like evil stepmother of my guild that
Wait,
Jesus.
I don't
rules
like
with
this
an
intro
iron
anymore.
fist
I don't like this one.
from his like throne made of I don't know, swords, we'll say. And yep. He's also the admin at Peak. You can see that red shirt. That's the color that you'll see when he bans you.
It's pretty good.
And he is one of the main theory guys for Windwalkers. And, well, there's been some Windwalker changes that we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
Just a couple.
Just a couple. Just a
I
couple.
mean, numerically, just a couple.
Then a bunch of bug fixes, which, don't you know, there are a bunch of bug fixes, finally. It only took Windwalker being good for a tier.
Yeah, well, who knew that it had so many bugs? I mean,
I, I didn't know it had so many bugs. Honestly, like Monk's a perfect class. There are no bugs.
our
Only
100 long list, you know?
there are no bugs. Only misunderstood features.
There you go.
um,
That's that degree working for you right there.
um, but before we get into 9.0.5 stuff, do we want to recap some of the stuff from the past couple weeks in them?
Sure. Yeah. So we did miss last week. Unfortunately, I was having fun in the sun, vacation. So we had to take a week off. So sorry about that, but we're back. We had a couple of quick things. So first of all, there's a patch next week.
Just a
So
patch
I know
on
we're gonna
Tuesday.
which
Yep.
is uh which is fast. Was not expecting that. Have a lot of stuff to do tomorrow to get ready for it. But yeah, there's a patch next week. It's 9.0.5. It contains a large number of changes for a bunch of different classes. We'll of course talk about the monk specific ones a little bit later, but they are introducing a couple of things I wanted to highlight here. The big one being Valor points are back. So this is a system I think we talked about a week or two ago now. You will be able to upgrade gear from Mythic Plus with Valor points, which is the currency you will gain by doing Mythic Plus. I guess the upper limit or how high you can upgrade is going to be based on a couple of new achievements. Essentially, doing all dungeons on a +5 puts you at what is it, 213? I want to say, or 207. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Doing all dungeons on a +10 is 213, and then doing basically getting KSM or Keystone Master, basically every dungeon on a 15 timed will be 220 in terms of upgrades. They also announced the cap. It'll be 5,000, I think, cap to start with.
Starting. And
Yeah,
that's
I think they changed it since the notes went out. I think it's a 1.5K increase each week, but the patch notes say 750.
no, it's a
Again,
1.5k cap on the amount you can have at once.
gotcha. Okay, I read that
It's
wrong
going
then.
to be just so PvP does 750 conquest a week. Valor cap is going to go up the same way, but the amount of currency you can have on you at any one time is capped at 1.5k,
Gotcha.
which is
It's dumb.
I don't like that because unlike PvP where like when you have conquest you can just go to the vendor and buy the piece that you want. There's no point in saving the conquest for later. Like
Mhm.
there are going to be situations where like I haven't gotten the trinket that I want yet. And since the valor points are
Mhm.
only used for upgrading it, if I haven't gotten the trinket yet, I can't upgrade the trinket, and therefore have nothing to spend my valor on.
It's a dumb
So,
system. I hate it already.
Yep.
so
So
systems flawed. Systems definitely flawed. Better than what we had, but still certainly flawed.
I would have honestly rather had nothing.
No, no, I would take this is better than nothing.
Maybe. So so there's that goes live. So if you're into upgrading a random piece of gear you may or may not get from a dungeon, you can do that maybe or maybe not. So it depends. So the Valor points go live. They also are doing some Covenant updates. I think the largest one being that Fleshcraft now has a DR associated to it. So they changed the way Fleshcraft works. It's not just a channeled, shield, right? But during the channel, you gain, what is it, like a 20% DR?
20% DR is the number they ultimately settled on. We talked a little bit
Yeah.
about Fleshcraft when the DR first came up, and most of what they changed about it actually is still present, so it's very similar to that initial version they put up. The only thing is they tweaked the damage reduction on it down from 30%.
Yeah, and I mean, this honestly makes it, at least for Mistweavers, Bone Dust Brew was already strong. Adding Fleshcraft in terms of DR just makes it probably the default raid pick for Mistweavers moving forward. I don't know if it changes anything for Windwalkers or Brewmasters, but for us, I mean, it'll end up being our default raid pick.
Brewmasters, it's hard, right? Because it really depends on how good Lila Serenity is and how good the Weapons of Order mastery buff is defensively. Because if
Mhm.
the mastery buff from Weapons of Order just by default it's good because mastery is good defensively. But then if File of Serenity also gets good value, then it's really hard to justify something else from a perspective. But this does make it a lot more interesting than it had been previously.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Yeah. So I mean, interesting changes there. They made a ton of changes to like every other part of the game. Like I don't think we can list them all here, but they made anima power changes. They've made legendary changes. We'll talk about a couple of those. They've updated some updated and changed some dungeons and things like that, tuning that way. It's actually a fairly large tuning patch,
Yeah.
coming fairly quickly into sort of a patch cycle. So I think this is one thing we talked about at the start of the expansion, which was like it'd be cool if Blizzard did patches quickly, and then I started this by complaining about there being a patch next Tuesday.
I mean,
But
this isn't even that fast either. It's March. Game
right,
released in November.
yeah, for Blizzard, that's quick. Like we're used to like 6-8 month cycles
Yeah.
where we get those sort of updates. So I mean, this is I think still faster than that. But yeah, big patch Tuesday. There's also a mount, I guess, if you guys care about that. The Wandering Ancient becomes available, which is a big
Yeah.
treat.
And
Looking kind of
everybody,
cool.
if you're subbed, you just get it for free.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the one that they talked about at BlizzCon a lot. Did the whole art
Yeah.
experience on it and all that. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah. So that's patch 9.5. We'll talk about the class changes, both changes of spells and then Lego changes a little bit later. So we'll go through that. There was also some raid tuning this week. So a couple of changes really to Enerva on basically the raid finder, normal and heroic difficulties, but mythic wise, some hungering destroyer changes in terms of health nerfs, also just in general damage nerfs to like Essence Sap now is less damage per stack. Um,
Yeah.
I think
Basically makes it less punishing to just have people sit in there. So
yeah.
get in the circle. And
Yeah, they
so it's
also
going to
made
make it
changes
easier
this.
to pug. It's not really going to change the. If you're already clearing it, it's not going to get any easier to clear.
Right. Yeah, it was very similar. And then Sun King Salvation had some changes in terms of like they
Only
reduced
some
the
of which
shield
went
strength.
live.
Oh, really? I didn't notice. I mean, I didn't
The
raid this week.
change to make the canisters go from a 2% max HP, 5% heal are not live.
I
Okay.
mean, that
Oh.
was a bit much. I thought that was a little excessive.
Um, so only some of the changes went live, but actually, from the stuff that I've seen this week, which I guess preliminary numbers insert warning here, um, it actually seems like just nerfing the shield, which is basically the big nerf,
Yeah.
um, is been a pretty big change for people being able to kill the boss, which makes sense because when I mean I think at least for my guild, meeting the healing check was like only part of the challenge of that boss. It was trying to meet the healing check while also meeting the DPS check, right? So if you make the DPS
Yeah.
check just 10% easier, then it makes the whole
You
fight
bring you
a
bring
lot
a
easier.
you bring a sixth healer, or you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah. You can.
Right.
Yeah. You can leave even out those cooldowns. Yeah. I mean, the healing checks already were pretty easy. I mean, even like by our second kill, we were cutting off the second healing shield in the second phase, and like it was very simple there. But yeah, so some raid tuning stuff. Probably expect some more. I don't know what is old EJ at? What boss are they at? Did they kill
Oh,
council
EJ
yet?
was on council. I think they're.
yeah,
I
They
think they're
killed
still on
it.
council.
they were a
Ah.
lot farther behind this tier than they have in the previous ones.
Yeah. So just, I mean, once they kill council, expect some sludgefish nerfs. Get easier there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's some raid tuning this week. Just with sort of the hotfix that went in. I guess partially in.
They are
Um,
on Sludgefist now.
Cool. So maybe some updates after they raid this week coming up. So then next up we have Old Preach Gaming, if you know him from his YouTube videos. He released his full list of ranked raids. Basically, ranked every raid in the game that he progressed on. I think he started at like 48 or something.
Yeah, there's
and went
so
1 to 48.
if you notice, we're on like what is this tier 26, 25.
Yeah, something like that.
That's just like the tiers that have their own. Traditionally, would have their own tier sets associated with them. So things like Trial of Valor didn't get their own tier number. So there's actually a lot more than 26 tiers in the game, especially when you go back and things like Karazhan or the Serpentine
Zul'Aman.
Cavern, Rules Lair, all that, the shared loot.
Yeah, they shared a tier.
So there's actually more raids than that, and he goes through all of them. No spoilers, because I mean, I haven't finished it yet.
Sorry, I put spoilers in
I know,
there.
it's okay. I don't think anybody's going to be really that surprised about it. There are a couple things that people might be surprised about. I, in particular, disagree with his take on Argus, but the rest of Antorus, he's correct on. So,
yeah, and he had some interesting, like, just in general, as you guys go through it, he had some raids at interesting places. Like he had, what was it? I just had it in my head before he started talking. Shit. There was one raid that he had very high, like higher than you would expect in terms of like its general sentiment. And I can't remember the name of it because most people be like, I hate this raid. Gosh.
was it
what was the name
BOD?
of it? No,
He
BOD
had
was
BOD
low.
higher than I expected. He had BOD as the highest raid in BOD, which I guess not that much competition, to be totally honest, but
yeah.
I think
I could understand getting there. I think
yeah.
Jaina colors BOD the wrong way.
and that's part of it is he didn't progress Jaina initially. He progressed it later.
Yeah. I think the other thing too is he left off Throne of Thunder, which he purposely starts that out with by saying like he only rated raids that he progressed on when they were current, and like I think Throne of Thunder he missed that tier.
Yeah.
I would expect Throne of Thunder would have been in his top 5, right? But he had like Obsidian Sanctum pretty high up there. A lot of like one boss raids ended up being a lot higher than I thought. But yeah, gosh, I can't remember the one raid. In any event, it's not a big deal. But yeah, he rates them all. It's interesting. It's cool. But his top 5, I don't actually agree with most of them. But that's just me. His number 1 though, I think is probably the only one I'd probably.
I'm not sure which way you have these sorted in the.
I'm not going to tell you
whether it's because like it could go either way. I could see either of these being number 1, top 5. They're pretty close. Not that I actually progressed either of them on Mythic, but just from the things that I've heard from people.
Yeah, they were all. I mean, his top 10. I don't think is too surprising, but yeah.
Is it? Oh, you have him listed on here in the top 5 that he did.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize. I thought everybody. Well, I didn't realize.
I mean, it's 2 40-minute long videos, so it takes a little bit of time to get through.
I don't disagree. I mean, I progged on all of these when they were live. I don't disagree. I think his number 1 was a great raid. I think people overblow it a bit because of, kind of the changes in raiding style that it spawned, and maybe spawned, bad things that you kind of look back and say, oh, this was when they did it better. And I think his number 2 wasn't it. I don't think it was a lot of fun when it first came out. It got a lot more fun once you were already in your the later raids and kind of just going back to it to have fun and goof around. I don't think in its initial go it was as fun as he's having it listed.
Yeah, but it was a cool list to go through. It honestly makes me want to make my own list, but in my own way, kind of. But yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, my list would be a whole lot shorter than him because it would basically start at, because that's the only one I progressed all of. That's the first raid I progressed all of.
Gosh, that's a short list. It's a short
Yeah,
It
for
list.
is a
real.
very short list, and there's not a lot of competition for that top
No,
slot.
Yeah, I
you
wonder how I
missed.
It's
could do
like
that.
Yeah, you missed some good rates. But cool. But yeah, Preach does it. It's actually really interesting. It takes you back to some of the things that maybe some
this
raids you haven't
does
thought about in a
make
while.
me more excited for the continuation of like the classic era servers. To be able to go back and do some of these.
Oh, for sure.
And I don't
Yeah.
think that Burning Crusade has that many. And like Karazhan is one that people love, and I actually have already done Karazhan. I did that one.
hmm
Um, that one wasn't really considered raiding in the same way that doing 25
Right.
mans was at the time. So,
I mean, like, yeah. I mean, like, I feel like he does.
but a lot of the other PC era ones are not high on his list.
Yeah, no, which is interesting because like I think he does a disservice to Black Temple. I think there's a lot more interesting fights in there that he gives it credit for. There are some very bad fights, but I think there's a lot of good fights. And even like the Magtheridon, Gruul's Lair, like that
Yeah.
tier is also
Yeah,
pretty good.
and so
SSC
one
Servantron's
thing,
actually pretty high. I think that's in his top 10. But
um, one thing that I noticed is that his rating of Castle Nathria is very low. And I'm curious whether you think that is just because of like a recency bias. It's like the current one and the wounds are still fresh kind of thing, or if it's actually deserving of like I think
No, I mean, I would put it above every single BFA raid.
yeah,
I mean,
and I
like,
I think some of that is probably also because all three of us did not hit Stone Legion Generals until after the hotfixes to it.
yes.
yeah, yeah. So we probably, I mean, I think we missed out on that being the low end, and like he took that into account too with bugs and stuff like that. He mentioned it, but yeah, I mean, 40th is I think very low in terms of like where I'd put it. I mean,
It might not have literally, but it was
yeah,
in
yeah,
the first video, so it was pretty
Right.
far down there.
yeah. So yeah, I don't think I'd put it that low, but it definitely would not make my top 10. Maybe not even my
No.
top 15 in terms of like rates I progressed on. But
So I need like one of those like tier list websites,
yeah, exactly. So I can
right?
see them
Where the
all.
buttons like the buttons are already there, like where people have already gone in and put the listing,
Yeah,
because I know I'll forget if like I rely on my own memory.
Mhm.
yeah. No, for sure. But cool. Yeah, I would definitely finish it, Emerson. You missed. I feel like God, dude, he does MOP dirty in terms of raids too. Like he misses. Like,
Yeah, I've got 20 minutes left in the second episode, so
nice, nice. But yeah, that's preacher stuff. It's actually really cool. Makes me think back about how much fun I used to have. Well, not used to have, but how much fun I had like raiding even back in like BC and classic and stuff like that. So, um,
Yeah,
so
that's why
cool.
I'm
So the,
excited about BC Classic.
oh, I am
yeah,
too.
yeah. I mean, I
You
think that
missed
was
us like gushing over BC
yeah.
Classic on the
Yeah.
BlizzCon episode. So
Yeah. Yeah, I
uh
think I talked about that too, like on our or what was that realm maintenance podcast too, where like BC was
yeah.
like the
Oh
where
yeah,
like
BC
rating
was the
clicked for
highlight
me.
of
Where like
the
rating was like,
yeah.
boom, I get it, I love it, I'm here to stay, you know?
Yeah, I mean
Um,
BC was when I started, so and got into rating it. Like I didn't
Yeah.
play classics. Well, I did, but not more than
Not
like a couple weeks.
yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, I bear a strong fondness for BC, and I would love to go back and do Gruul's specifically above any other raid in there, but do
Really?
Gruul's. Yes, because I'd like to do Gruul's with the knowledge that I have and experience that I have now. Like that raid completely baffled my mind when I was younger. It just I didn't understand the concept of range tanks or all of the mechanics and shit falling from the ceiling
So
and
good.
multiple targets in a boss fight. Like it did not make any sense to me at all. Now all that stuff is totally regular and not bizarre at all, but that was like really was something that I did not understand why it was the way that it was.
That's funny. Yeah, I have the same idea except with McDaradon's layer because like I was the cube caller. Like that was literally my
Okay.
job was to call groups. So like I want to go back and do that again because like at the time I was like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. Like how do I hit Shadow Ball over and over on my Warlock and still remember what group number to call? So, but yeah, um, but yeah,
Yeah,
BC will be fun.
that's it. Like Mags was like the first, like, oh man, this is what real raid coordination looks like.
Yeah, exactly, exactly, exactly. Um, So cool, but yeah, that's Preach's list. I think we'll take a look at that. Definitely watch those videos. Like Emerson said, there it's about an hour and a half worth of content spread across 2 videos. So take a little bit of time, but it's definitely a good time to listen through. And then finally, from last week, unless anybody has anything they want to add last minute, has been old NetEase and Blizzard are banning people in China for essentially selling Hall of Fame, Alliance Hall of Fame. So we talked about this a little bit over the past couple of weeks, where it's been an interesting Hall of Fame list in terms of like guilds that have been added of like players that have killed the boss like one time or cleared the whole raid on Mythic the first time through, one shot everything. Um, and so they've started to ban basically players or accounts and open the Hall of Fame back up, which I think is the
So
big thing.
we are still getting cross roll mythic next week, as far as I know.
Yep. Yes,
Um,
that's still the plan.
but
Yeah.
that they are like, we're not going to end up with a Hall of Fame on the Alliance side that has 90 people in it permanently, 90 guilds in it. It is going to be eventually full again. But yeah, it's been really interesting. And so the thing that separates this from like selling people, you know, raid spots to come and get carried through a raid is that they weren't just, well, for one thing, they were doing it for real money. And for another thing, they were selling it by piloting the player's characters, which is
Yeah.
not something that is okay in any form of content. So, like, if you trying to compare it to like an arena boost, when you pay somebody to carry you through arenas by basically being a really bad arena partner, and they, through sheer force of will, carry you to 1800, is totally different because you are each playing your own characters and also presumably doing it for gold and not for money.
Right.
I mean, that being said, since we talked about BC, back in BC, piloting other people's characters was a big deal in
Yeah,
arenas.
Yeah.
yeah, that has been not acceptable as far as Blizzard is concerned for a very long time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean that's a big I mean, I think the biggest deal with this is that they're taking any action at all, right? Like generally
Yeah,
speaking, like real
Yeah.
money sort of trading and transactions is something that's just a part of the culture and the way you play over there, right? Like it's not a surprise that they are selling certain things, even particularly Hall of Fame in this case, right? In terms of just that community. So the fact that NetEase is taking any action is the just interesting.
I
We'll
think
say.
it's funny.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it's funny that people were selling. Ended up, people were. I think the suspected number of spots that were sold is like 30 spots on the Hall of Fame for the Alliance.
Yeah,
It's a lot.
it's a lot. It's a lot of guilds. Yeah, yeah,
It's um, yeah.
yeah.
So
So they're banning for it, but I mean, I don't expect this to stop. I mean, maybe they will stop selling Hall of Fame, but it will not stop just the real money trading that's going on
Right.
in general in the region. So they
I
will
mean,
continue to be.
even in the NAEU region, like Izor from the Hunter Discord / Gallywix got nailed for real money trading.
I mean, it's
It's
just
been a thing.
it's an inevitable eventuality for any of this stuff. I think, like, I think it should be punished, but like nobody should be surprised when
Yeah,
something like Gallywix, turns out that somebody was doing real money transfers, or people, there's thousands of dollars to be made by doing this if you can, like,
yeah.
Oh yeah.
and no direct result, no direct problem outside of the game. Like, you'd be insane not to do it.
Oh yeah. I mean, like to be fair, if I was younger and had more time and all I want to do was play WoW all the time, like it's not a big deal to do it, right? And the
Yeah.
Yeah.
biggest thing you lose is an account, right? And like if you have the time to level one back up or recreate one, like
Yeah.
it's not that big of a loss unless they start to IP ban or actually
Especially
like
when you reach the
oh
point that you've made more money than it costs to buy the game plus a boost.
yeah.
Well, and it's just like, even still, like, say they do IP ban, you don't get to play Warcraft. If you come, like, they don't take the money back.
Yeah,
If you
exactly.
come
Yeah.
out of it, with 5 grand, yeah, I'll go play something else. Like,
Yeah.
for a lot of people, that's easily worth it. No brainer.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So But I mean, I think the good thing here, well, the good thing here is at least they're opening the spots back up for the, the 4 alliance guilds that
Yeah,
are
I mean,
still rating mythic or
for
something.
the rest of us, this is just strictly win-win. Like the rest of the world gets cross-realm mythic, um, which Puro and chat notes has been kind of the main reaction most people have had is like, "Yay, cross-realm mythic is open."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And then also guilds will have their spots. Basically, the alliance guilds will have continue to have a shot at getting into Alliance Hall of Fame. I know people don't really think too much of the Alliance Hall of Fame, but hey, a lot of them killed it faster than we did, so can't be that
Yep.
bad.
Yeah. That is true. That is true. Um, so cool. Any other items I missed from the last either week or two? I don't honestly. I've been laying on the beach drinking high noons, so I have no idea what's going on.
It's
So
been actually
Yeah,
aside
that's
from
fine.
like the patch, obviously, it's been a fairly quiet week. It's just, uh, well, 9.0.5 is upon us, and Babs, do you want to tell us about how the sky is falling?
You sure you? I mean, I think it might be better if you guys talk about your specs
Oh,
first.
it'll be really short. So Brewmaster's getting
Yeah.
very few changes. Actually, only 2 changes. One of them is a buff to the Mighty Poor legendary. All the numbers went up. It's still not worth using. And
nice.
then we got a change to the Shao Might legendary, which got a 500% buff, and also still not worth using. Fun
Well,
fact.
when I saw that, I had a really, I think it's a really good idea, and I'm, kind of surprised that Blizzard hasn't done this after so many years. But they should, before they release an expansion, have a period of time where they let players test these things, and they release the numbers and let us kind of figure out what things might be strong, what might need a 500% increase. That, and then iterate on those changes based on the feedback and the math that comes of it. I think that would be a really valuable thing for them to
That
do.
would be a great thing for them to do. You're exactly right. As an extra bit of fun, if so, there was an error in SimC previously that was inflating the value of Shao Might. If that hadn't been an error, this 500% buff would have put it almost exactly like being the top single target legendary, but not by so much that you'd use it in cleave scenario. So it still would have been like probably the default for a lot of fights because single target, single target.
Yeah.
Well, maybe because you have to give up high tolerance. It would have been competitive, but because of that bug, the buff was actually a little bit smaller than they probably expected it to be, assuming they were looking at SimC data. Because let's be honest, we know from Azerite stuff they were definitely SimC data.
Yeah.
So it is not quite as far up there as they were probably expecting.
Gotcha. Well, that's unfortunate.
So
um,
the 2 legendaries that we have right now that we use are need to be legendary actually.
interesting. Interesting. Yeah, I mean, and in terms of like Mistweaver changes, we got some mana reductions to both Vivify and Renewing Mist, along with a buff to Clouded Focus, which is our legendary that essentially, whenever we're channeling Soothing Mist, will increase the healing and decrease the mana cost. Whenever you use like Enveloping Mist or Vivify, stacking up to 3 times. So they basically both increase the healing buff and then increase the mana cost reduction, which for Sun King, great buff, awesome, make you do even more, healing. For any other fight in the game that has ever been created, it does not matter. You will still never use this legendary. So similarly, it's a slight buff if you crafted it to do Sun King. Awesome, still use it. It's still better than at this point. It's probably generally going to be better than Invokers or um, any other legendaries out there for the fight specifically. However, it's not going to be used anywhere else in the game. So, I mean, if you have extra Soul Ash, do it. If not, it doesn't matter.
That's the kind of situation I mentioned. The Mighty Poor legendary, like all the numbers
Yeah.
went up, people aren't going to use it, and the reason is that it's just got fundamental design issues. Like
Yeah.
it gives us more armor while we already have a giant ass shield for more than our entire health pool. Like of all the times I need armor, that's not one of them.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and the issue with this legendary is like the buff only lasts when you're channeling Soothing Mist. So as soon as you break the channel, you lose the buff. So like unless you're going to cast on the same target over and over again for more than like 4 or 5 seconds, like there's no reason to use it. You'll never use it. And then like healing just does not work that way in raids and even in Mythic Plus, right? It does work like that way on Sun King because you have a mob that is a massive health pool that you need to heal up.
Yep.
Awesome. Doesn't no other fights like that. So, but the mana cost reductions on Vivify and Renewing Mist are interesting in terms of just allowing us to cast more spells, right? So it's an interesting change that they're going after mana costs in terms of like a Mistweaver, right? Where you'd expect, generally they're going to do like spell power buffs in terms of like making something stronger or weaker, depending, right? But this they went after mana, which just from an efficiency perspective is great. Abe and Lab from Peak did a big article. There's one in I think the Mistweaver announced channel, right? Big article on sort of the efficiencies, what you're gaining, right? And I think at the end of the day, with the mana itself, you're gaining probably like what they final numbers. You're gaining almost like 7 or 8 vivifies over the course of a 6-minute fight. And that also equates to about 3.5, 4 essence haunts. So it's not it's a noticeable amount of healing. I think in HPS numbers they gave it about a 2 or 300 HPS increase with the mana cost, and that all depends on how much you cast Vivify actually.
Right.
So it's not a large buff, but it is a noticeable one. So for a 9.0.5 patch or an 0.5 patch, like I think it's good. It's probably the best we could have expected. And it's probably just in the right direction in terms of like not giving us more spell power on spells that are probably already going to overheal, right? Or just on spells that don't need the extra spell power, it's really the efficiency that we need. So good changes, I'll say, in terms of Mistweaver stuff. But that's about it. So people were expecting more. As always, people always think Mistweaver needs something more. We didn't get it, but I think we're in a fine position either way. So this just helps.
Says the man that switched from Mistweaver to Holy Paladin.
Okay, there's a couple reasons about that. All right. But I will say that Holy Paladin right now, I'll be honest with you, is much more fun to me than Mistweaver is.
Okay.
Because Holy Paladin has the gameplay that I want in a Mistweaver.
Right. They've got a Holy Paladin
Right.
basically fist weaves.
Exactly. Yeah, it's got, melee abilities that generate holy power and use holy power to do healing, which is like literally what I want out of Mistweaver, which with chi and like being able to melee,
I
build
am
chi,
still
use chi
super
on.
annoyed that they didn't give Brewmaster and Miss Chi back. It's
It's
so
dumb, dude.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised. Thought of all the things that was going to be it.
they gave Brewmaster's Chi back, but it's like budget Chi. It's a buff.
I mean, do you want to give up Clash if you
Yes.
got Chi back?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
They didn't give Mistweavers anything. We got 0. We got literally not. We got Touch of Death, which every other spec already has. So it's literally just saying this works with Mistweaver now.
Oh no, Brewmaster
And we got
didn't have
Expel
it.
Harm, which we don't like. Expel Harm isn't even on my bars. I don't have a keybind for Expel Harm. It literally, when I open my spell book, it's got the gold border around it. Like this spell isn't on your bars because it's terrible. So we literally got. I guess sorry, we got it. We got our Celestials, so we did get
Yes.
something. But outside of our Celestials, we got nothing else. Not even Healing Spheres. Fucking Healing Spheres.
Brewmaster's got Purified Chi, which you get when you purify. So it's literally like it's in the name, except instead of 1 to 5, it goes 1 to 10, and it's a buff instead of being actually chi that's like generated from your abilities. Even if they just like gave us chi and said you can only generate chi using Purifying Brew, that would for one thing reveal how dumb the system is, but it would have I mean it would have been a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
I don't think they want to reveal how dumb their systems are.
But in any event, enough complaining about our 2 specs. And let's talk about Windwalkers, which actually got like some noticeable both changes and bug fixes.
Yeah. So, the biggest thing to kind of start off is the change to Zuen's Treasure, or the Zuen Battle Gear Legendary. It saw the crit damage, the crit amount increased, as well as its duration. Or sorry, the amount it takes off of the cooldown of Fist of Fury when you crit with Rising Sun Kick was increased as well. So it was really that was really good. A lot of people were very happy. Me personally, that's the one that if I could pick a legendary to play with, that's it. If it worked the way that it did back in Tomb of Sargeras, which is where that legendary comes from. So it was bumped up. It got a nice increase. It's not enough to merit switching to it over invokers, or Kiefer's in rated battlegrounds, but it's getting closer. There are some other things that I'll talk about in a little bit as I, kind of work my way through my rant about the changes that I'll touch on as to why uh, Zuen's treasure is kind of it could stand to benefit some more from some other changes that would be positive for the spec. But yeah, so the big thing that everybody's been talking about, we've had people coming back, who haven't played the games in years, tweeting about it. Big Dumb Guild tweeted about it earlier today. Max did a whole Maximum from Limit did a whole thing on his stream. And I popped on and answered some questions and stuff about it for him. But the big thing is that for anyone who's not familiar with Windwalker, which I'm kind of confused as to how you got to this podcast, but if you're not familiar with Windwalker, Windwalker has had a lot of bugs over the years to the point that bugs being the class fantasy is a you know uh whatever the opposite of hilarious, sadly true meme. um that kind of Windwalkers have had to experience over the years. But we did see going into BFA, we saw quite a lot of bug fixes, quite a lot of things that didn't work the original way, or needed to work better, whatever you want to call it, work better now. But there was still some pretty gaping bugs left. So what happened was, a couple days ago, a couple of our intrepid PTR investigators went through and were kind of testing things out, seeing how things were going to look going forward, and noticed that some things didn't behave the way that they used to anymore. So
I got your
uh,
post pulled up right now, Babizon. There's a lot on here.
yeah. So I mean, and it's some of that is kind of weird because like half of those are things that didn't. Well, all right. So if you look at the actual patch notes, there's a whole bunch of stuff. But like half of those things were things that also broke on PTR when they were fixing the other things. So the big thing that in terms of positives, they added Eye of the Tiger. It had its damage now increased with when you have Storm, Earth, and Fire out, which is something they have to do for just about every ability that Storm, Earth, and Fire doesn't copy. Um, so that was a nice thing that they fixed. They added mastery damage back to Touch of Death, which is a very nice increase to Touch of Death's capability. Certainly a good 20, 25, maybe even 30% increase to what Touch of Death can do. It's a little weird because it really only matters if you use it when the target is below 15%, but not below your health threshold.
Right.
Just because if they're below your health threshold, you're going to kill them anyway, so the extra mastery damage doesn't matter. But it does give, if you have to use it or kind of use it proactively or to be a little bit safer, you're not sure you're going to be able to snipe the end of it, you're going to get an extra 25% onto your Touch of Death. That's really nice. It's counted for mastery and continued the mastery, but now it's back to benefiting from it like it did in Legion, or through about 90% of Legion. That was a change that was added in Old Year. Yeah, so in terms of bug fixes, the two big bugs that were fixed, and I say that with uh, quotation marks because nobody asked for them to be fixed. They were bugs that we were quite fond of for, obviously obvious reasons. They made the spec strong, as well as made the spec a little bit easier to play. And some of the more difficult things to manage made them a little bit easier to manage. But the first one is that basically on live, if you have Storm, Earth, and Fire up and you cast Fist of Fury, and then you cast something else ending your Fist of Fury early, they will continue to cast Fist of Fury. You can watch them continue to and if you cast something else, they'll also cast that other thing. So it's visually hilarious. It goes to show how stupid the clones are. Um, just fundamentally dumb. So you could do it right now on live. Go enjoy it for a couple days, see what it looks like. Press Fist of Fury while clones are out. Press another button like a Rising Sun Kick is great. They'll do a backflip like you do a backflip, and you still see the movement
That's
of their
awesome.
hands and stuff. It's quite enjoyable. Same with Whirling Dragon Punch. Really, anything else, they will continue Fist of Fury. So that was obviously a bug, and I say that in the firmest sense of that it wasn't a bug. It was a unintended effect of something that they intended to do a couple years ago, where we ran into the problem that they would just not cast the next ability because they were still channeling Fist of Fury. If
Right.
you were somebody that didn't have a macro that made it so you didn't clip Fist of Fury, if you did clip Fist of Fury on purpose or on accident, they would not cast the next thing. So you would
Oh,
skip a Rising Sun Kick, whatever. That was a really big deal back in Warlords. Um, and when we started to notice that, as we really learned more about Storm, Earth, and Fire. So that got changed. They got a added cast time bonus for that, so they would channel faster than we do, which again is something that you could game to your advantage. Where once they're done channeling it, you could just cast something else because you're really only missing out on a small portion of damage. Um, but now on the PTR, when you stop casting Fist of Fury for any reason, they stop casting Fist of Fury for any reason. So it just eliminates that. And it wasn't a huge deal, but it was something that had become integral to weapons of order for Kyrian monks, which most Windwalkers are. And kind of that was something that we did anytime Fist of Fury and Storm, Earth, and Fire were up inside weapons of order as a Kyrian.
gotcha. So is that, I mean, does that translate into the now a damage loss because you back
Right.
to the old bug where like you're gonna miss if they're channeling Fist of Fury and you cast like a Rising Sun Kick, they're just not gonna cast the Rising Sun Kick?
So it sounds like what they'll do now is they will stop Fist of Fury and cast a Rising Sun instead, which then means
Correct.
you lose part of your Fist of Fury.
Gotcha. Okay.
Before it
Yeah.
would have been that you lost, a little bit of the 35% of your Fist of Fury that comes to yourself or whatever the
Right.
number is.
45. But yeah, so
Yeah.
the way that it worked out essentially was that um, if you cut your fist in half, they would still get their full value. Now they cut their fists in half. It makes sense as to that's why it should work. They will cast things right afterwards. They did improve the spec. These bug fixes were an improvement to the AI, to the way that um, ability worked. It was just something that we got very used to.
Yeah.
It was something that we were very fond of in Tomb of Sargeras. It was part of that tier set bonus where when Rising Sun Kick was up, you would cancel Fist of Fury, and the way that those abilities flowed from one into the other beautifully, and why a lot of people really like that tier bonus. So we understand why they did it. Nobody is begrudging them a bug fix. We're begrudging them a bug fix that we enjoyed and really and increased our damage.
Of all the bugs that Windwalker has, that's one of the ones I would imagine is lowest on the priority list to fix because it doesn't actually like break things the way that some of the other bugs.
Right.
Yeah. Plus, it
Yeah.
seems like it's been around for a very long time, like
Yes.
multiple expansions. So,
I mean, yeah,
to,
from the best of what I could remember, it was put into place during Hellfire Citadel.
gotcha.
And really, it would have been put in place earlier if we had learned more about Storm, Earth, and Fire earlier.
Yeah.
It took us to about halfway through Blackrock Foundry to really start noticing that, hey, these clones don't do everything that we thought they would. At the time we didn't know that they needed their own Tiger Palm debuff or buff and Rising Sun Kick debuff. They wouldn't just copy yours and other stuff. So over the years, Blizzard has fixed some of those things. They've taken out those two specific examples. And it's been slow progress to make the clones less absolutely hilariously dumb.
Gotcha. I mean, it sounds like this is one of those things like some intern picked it up and was like, "I'll fix this one. Good first issue."
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously probably a joke that's not super far off.
Yeah.
The joke for anybody who's been around Monk, and Windwalker for a while is that Storm, Earth, and Fire is quite possibly, and I have not met with or spoken with anybody who has offered an alternative, but quite possibly the most confusingly coded ability that exists in the game. And just the fact that the way that it's coded originally, is different now, but a lot, when they changed it going into Legion, they kept a lot of, you could tell that they built off of the underlying code and just changed some of the behavior. So a lot of the problems that existed in Legion were still there, or smaller or lessened. It's all very bizarre.
So
Um,
what you're saying basically is that Storm, Earth, and Fire is like an onion. It has layers.
it has layers. Oh yes, I mean, the whatever poor sap, decided that today was the day I'm going to mess with Storm, Earth, and Fire, clearly had no idea what they were getting themselves into, because if they were, they would have left it alone.
It's so funny.
And I say that confidently with love in my heart for whoever, felt that, this was the thing that they wanted to do, on their Monday, afternoon. Hey, this will be a great idea. I'll impress some guys, like, let's make the monks happy and fix some bugs. He just decided to fix the ones that we really were very partial to. But yeah, so the next one, that one's annoying. It decreases our damage by 4, 5, maybe 6% in single target, less so in AOE, and in practicality, that number is probably a little bit smaller than that. But Windwalker
That's
single
like a
target.
SimC number, right? Where if you're doing it perfectly, that's the amount you would get.
I mean, that was, well, no, I mean, that was the number that I got by going through the top logs, using my
Oh,
own
I see.
logs,
I see.
to look at, okay, if my damage for Fist of Fury, or if my damage from Fist of Fury was the same as, or sorry, if my clone's damage was the same as mine, how much would the damage difference be? So in the article that Emerson was showing, there's a bunch of stuff where I went through logs from the top 3 monks on each fight, as well as my own, because I'm certainly not in the top 3. Um, but as kind of an example of somebody that's not doing it as well, but some of, so the better you do it, the more affected you are by this buff, or by this bug fix, which functionally is a nerf.
Mhm.
But really, it just, yeah, Windwalkers don't have a ton of single target damage. A lot of our damage on logs, and why we look so strong, is because of very strong AoE damage, as well as just cooldowns, that are timed very nicely with a lot of the mechanics, on in the raid.
Mhm.
The bigger one, and I think the one that is going to turn a lot more people off to Windwalker, is the fact that they finally went back through and whatever this intern was, I have to give him credit, because for the most part, with some exception, Mark of the Crane now works the way that it's supposed to. On live, it would persist when the target, if a target died with a Mark of the Crane stack. Mark of the Crane is the debuff that increases your spinning crane kick damage.
Mhm.
If a target died with that debuff, then that debuff would persist indefinitely, essentially. Um,
That explains why I would sometimes in keys get stuck at just 6 stacks of Mark of the Crane, just
yes,
forever.
yeah. So the way that it works is that those stacks wouldn't fall off, and um, unless you lost, like, if you could kind of find your way to a higher stack number, and if you were at 5, right? If you only had, you could be at 5 or 6 stacks with only 2 ones that are actually active, 2 debuffs active on targets. So that's, what was a little wonky. So, that was something that we, Windwalkers took advantage of. It was something that, Mark of the Crane was pointed out as being a problem child quite a few times during BFA. We went through a series of iterations. One where we couldn't cast, uh, or we wouldn't get a Mark of the Crane stack at all. That lasted for a couple days as somebody was working their way through it. Other stuff like that. Somebody was trying, and they kind of settled with what transitioned to, the way that we have now, where stacks would kind of indefinitely last. You could maintain 6 stacks on, 1 target, essentially. For like last night when you guys were doing Stone Legion, I was talking meta through, how to kind of take advantage, and he was overdoing it, keeping up kind of a lot more marks than he needed to, which really is good practice for next week because
He's going to need to do it next week.
he's going to need to do it
Well,
next week, assuming he's on his monk and not on his mage.
Yeah, hopefully he won't be
But
on Stone Legion Generals because we will have killed the
right,
boss. But
right. Well, so he will get. You should see a noticeable rise in his AOE damage for your next raid,
nice.
because of some of these changes that he will hopefully make. But basically, what they did on the PTR, they kind of finally succeeded in it working the way that it works. In that there was a period of time where basically the initial change was that when your target died, you lost the stack. This was problematic because for obvious reasons. Um, we didn't want to just spontaneously lose the stack because we, you know, uh, because the target died. Ideally, we're uh, the stack would exist after the target died for a certain amount of time, and that's the way that it works now. So, if a target dies with 10 seconds left on their debuff, you will maintain that stack for an extra 10 seconds. That's really the way that it should work. Nobody is saying that that's not the way that it should work, but what what a lot of Windwalkers, especially a lot of the people that were getting used to the spec and all of that, um, came to find was that you could maintain more stacks through pulls. So you would not, in a Mythic Plus, you would not have to get new stacks every time you pulled a new trash pack.
Right.
Now you will have to do that. That is the way that it worked for all of Legion, on and off for the most part in BFA, and obviously the way that it's supposed to work. But it's a big quality of life change for people who are not accustomed to it, which is a lot of people given the increase in Windwalker population. It also does strictly translate into a damage loss, because you now have to spend the first 2, 3, 6 globals inside of um, a trash pack getting your stacks back up. And that's not something that we had to do before, so we do lose some of that initial burst.
I imagine
We're
it's also
not
going to affect things like Stone Legion Generals, for example. If you could get the debuff on all three of the first set of skirmishers, you would just have 3 stacks of it permanently for the
right.
rest of the fight.
Yeah, I mean that's if you watch my kill, if you watch any of the kill videos of the better Windwalkers who utilize this, by the time that you transition call through the first phase and she hits 50, you can maintain 6 stacks for the rest of the fight while only attacking one target. It's not automatic, but it's something that you pretty quickly get used to in terms of figuring it out. So it is something that's very doable, and it makes sense as to why it's fixed. But it is something like, for example, on Stone Legion, I think that's a great example of a raid boss, where it's going to be when there's going to be an effect, but it really has an effect because, when you get to the commandos, for example, you will have to, um, kind of prep your stacks.
Yeah.
You currently can just kind of still have 6 stacks
Yeah.
and, switch to when the commandos are ready to go, you just blow them the heck up. Now you'll kind of have to prep a little bit ahead of time, which is fine. It's the way that's supposed to be, and people will get used to it. But it is just a big kind of quality of life suck that for those of us that really got used to it, it's just going to be very inconvenient. We've seen the greener grass and had the grass taken out from under us. But yeah,
Gotcha.
so I mean, it's we're looking at my numbers that I put in the in the article. Those 2 changes alone, are functionally about a 5% damage loss on single target. And depending on the length of a trash pack and all that stuff, there's a lot of factors, but kind of the rough estimate is 25% on some on any trash pack that you don't have Storm Earth and Fire active, where you have to target and stack them up yourself. You're going to be losing that a big chunk of damage, especially from on the pull, because you're just going to have to do things manually. There were a bunch of other bugs that were introduced while they were fixing these. So like in the article that Emerson linked, There's a lot of stuff that's crossed out now that is fixed, that they did fix that. So they introduced a lot of bugs, and that's been kind of the long-standing problem with Storm, Earth, and Fire is you fix one, you pop up two. They fixed two and created at least three. Those ones have been fixed, but it was just kind of a hilarious reminder of the jankness that is trying to mess with Storm, Earth, and Fire.
Go back and forth, yeah. And so that's like, I
Um,
mean, the 25% is, it seems significant, or could be end up being significant in terms of like the reduction. I mean, do you think this displaces or moves Windwalker in terms of their like flavor of the month status, for the rest of the tier,
well,
or
yeah, so that's like a really, because there's, should it? The answer is no. Will it? The answer is yes.
gotcha?
And one of the things, for anybody that's in the Windwalker channels, my announcement to the Windwalkers, involved saying goodbye to the flavor of the month people. Um, but really, the way that, right now, my numbers, the numbers and stuff that I said, and the numbers in the article, those are meant to be the higher end. These are the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
Any pull that you have Storm, Earth, and Fire available, you're not going to spend as long tab targeting. You're going to spend, a third of the time building your stacks yourself. So it's going to be a lot easier to do that. You're going to lose a lot less damage, on those pulls.
Hmm.
Single target, or raid bosses where you're using more AoE, on a Stone Legion general, I don't really care much about my Fist of Fury damage, so that canceling it really is not that big of a deal because a lot more of the damage is spinning crane kick and stuff like that. So the single target damage loss is a lot less relevant on AoE, just like the AoE damage loss is a lot less relevant on single target. The problem is, in terms of the flavor of the month people, is that Windwalker really was flavor of the month because it was strong, but it also had some of these things that people got used to that made the spec a lot easier to digest
Hmm.
for new players. One of my problems with Windwalker for years is it is relatively restrictive for new players. It's not a spec that you're going to pick up and look at everything and say, oh yeah, this is how I should use this. This is what when I do that, and so on. And it's gotten better. It's not as bad as it was in Legion, when even those of us that actively did theory crafting had very little idea what some of these things did under the hood. But it is something that the the flavor of the month people are just not going to have the experience, the fortitude, to look at something and say, oh yeah, no, that's okay, I'll stick it out. Losing
They're
damage
not
is okay
they're not
because, I mean,
Windwalker lifers is basically what you're
yeah, I
saying.
mean, by definition, their hold on any spec is tenuous.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and the idea that, okay, Windwalker is strong, but really, it is a little bit overinflated on logs and stuff
I
like
mean,
that.
I've got Sledge Fist pulled up right now on Warcraft logs, the percentiles for Mythic Sledge Fist, and Windwalker is a solid, middle of the pack. I guess
Right.
Sledge Fist is maybe not the best because of the 1 minute damage intervals, and so obviously the specs that can take advantage of those intervals are going to do the best.
Yeah, but
But
Windwalker is one of those specs.
right,
We have Storm, Earth, and Fire up for every pillar. We have
yeah,
Weapons of Order up for every other. Windwalker is one of the best.
okay.
A fight like Hungering Destroyer is a real, that's kind of our go-to example for single target. For melee, at least, you can't really compare melee to range, but you compare
Yeah.
melee to melee and range to range.
Right. So
Just the distance.
on Sledge Fist, Windwalker is right now the second melee DPS, right
Right.
behind. I guess there's a Ret Paladin up here, but right behind Unholy DK and Ret Paladin.
Sure.
And with the about a 5% single target damage reduction, they're gonna still be in this like pack of all the melee or a lot of the melee. Sorry, warriors, but they are going to be at the lower end of that pack instead of the
Right.
upper end of it, and that's really like it's not like sky is falling tier, at least when it comes to single target, but it is painful.
Yeah. I mean, there's a good chance that Windwalker will be okay. But Windwalker has spent years being absolute garbage. And so even from somebody that has been a Windwalker lifer, with except my small vacation onto Demon Hunter, which I will die before doing again.
What about your mage?
Well, that Mage Hunter, that's a but Demon Hunter though. If I go back to Demon Hunter, that is admitting defeat. I'd rather stop playing the game. Um, but other options, maybe my plan is to see how things shake out. But a big chunk of that for anybody who's listening, going, "Oh my God, Babylonius is going to change away from Windwalker." Ah. A big part of that is my own personal performance. Windwalker has a lot of shit to watch, and I die a lot because I'm watching a lot of shit. So a better player, who's more able to manage all of that wouldn't have to switch off Windwalker. But I have a real survivability problem in Raid. And Windwalker is not contributing to any assistance in that, given the amount of things that you have to keep track of and watch.
And now they've basically taken it and added a couple of.
Correct. They, especially in AoE, yeah, they've added more things kind of for Windwalkers to need to track, kind of taken away some of the safety nets that made things a little bit easier for us. So my plan is still sticking with the Windwalker. But I do expect in probably 2 to 3 weeks, I think we'll have a good sense of where things shook out. There's a lot of moving parts with other specs as well, in terms of their gains and whatnot. So it's hard to say. But certainly in terms of the the flavor of the month, there's nothing I can do for them.
Yeah.
And there's nothing that the big thing for this is there's nothing that I want to do for them. Like not that I dislike them, because please play Windwalker, give us more population. But it functionally, there's nothing that I want to like. I don't want to say, hey, no, just stick around, it'll be okay, because this is a really good example of why it may just not be okay. I don't want to give people hope,
Yeah.
wrongfully. There might be hope. There is still hope for, some goofy things, or, the
We
biggest
will
thing
be
that,
getting 9.1 PTR shortly after 9.0.5
right.
goes live as well. So it's entirely possible that 2 weeks from now there's more changes up on PTR that mean that Windwalker is back on top for next tier. So
Right. And I mean, and there's potential that in 2 or 3 weeks, Blizzard looks at, where Windwalker is and say, okay, we'll toss him a bone. We'll toss him a,
5% aura
5%,
buff.
5% or above. The biggest thing that I'm advocating for, for any Blizzard developers who happen to be listening, um, is increasing Fist of Fury damage. Fist of Fury really hits like a wet noodle.
Yeah.
Now we got very used to having open palm strikes. By the end of BFA, open palm strikes was like 60% of the damage that came from Fist of Fury. Um,
Love Azurite.
so yeah, so now it's comparatively very weak. But improving Fist of Fury damage would do a lot of things. It would mean that we're not even going to think about canceling it. Really under any circumstance. We'll make sure we're still casting it like we're, quote unquote supposed to by the design. Other things that will kind of reduce our reliance on spitting crane kick in AoE situations. It does give you, the people that are able to aim it the right way and get more targets will be rewarded better. It gives us something that we don't have to set up. You just get 3 chi and go. As well as just giving us, more umph for, a kind of a core ability that we've had for a long time. So that is my, the big thing that I'm advocating.
Not gonna lie, I don't mind Fist of Fury feeling kind of anemic because it means it feels less bad when I have to interrupt it to kick.
Sure, but that's also something that would be a really nice thing to be able to do.
Yeah, that's true too. If they wanted to both buff it and also let you kick during it, that's like top tier
Like
Blizzard, please.
I mean, and even if, because function, like you think about it, right? It thematically makes sense.
Yeah,
You are punching it, and
our
you're going
interrupt
to use,
is actually styled as a punch.
right, a spear hand strike.
Yeah,
but why can't you just open your fist or whatever
my camera's at a
looks
bad
like.
angle to do it.
But isn't like you're punching with your fist, but then like a spear, you'd have to like open.
Well,
Right,
yeah, but if you're
that?
already punching them, it's not that much to open your hand.
You are a intensely practiced and experienced martial artist.
I
You
am
can
not.
open your hand.
I'm pretty sure even you can open your hand, and
Like you
I
just
am.
this to this punching, closed fist, open hand. You know, with some practice. I'm not saying you can do it right away. But with mild practice, you too can open your hand.
Maybe I'll head to the dummies and work on that maybe after
Yeah,
this. The
yeah, I mean,
practice
I
the
guess you're a
hands.
yeah,
Mistweaver, so it makes sense that you don't have a lot of experience with it.
it's true.
Don't give us an interrupt. Don't give us anything.
Um, I mean, we can add that to the list of like really great quality of life changes they can make up there with like removing Celestial Brew from the GCD, maybe
Yes.
taking our invocations off the GCD. You know,
Oh,
can I complain more about the GCD, or
Yeah.
is that too BFA for us?
I think we're
I
past
mean,
that.
I think like even if using Spearhand Strike interrupts or like pauses Fist of Fury, right? So for that 1 second of that global,
It's not on
you're
the global
not
though,
doing Fist of
right?
Fury damage. Is it? No, it's probably not. I
No,
don't think
interrupts
any of
aren't on the.
right. So but whatever. Like
Yeah.
have that pause where you're not, you are open, whatever, spear hand striking, whatever that looks like. And so you're not furiously fisting, y- you know, like let it pause and resume after.
I mean, if they really wanted, they could go crazy and have it be like if you successfully interrupt while you're channeling Fist of Fury, it cancels it still, but it does some consolation damage.
I mean,
Just
or
something to make
starts
it.
over.
Or oh man,
I mean, there are
imagine that
specs
in
that get
PvP. That sounds fantastic.
right. I mean, imagine getting extra damage by
Hmm.
interrupting things. Looking at you, demon hunters.
Ooh, I like it.
Yeah, I definitely think they should add more interesting like interactions between spells for monks because that
Yeah.
always goes well. There's never any issues with that.
I mean, okay, almost all the issues with monk spell interactions are Storm, Earth, and Fire. Let's be real.
Right.
That's fair. That's
But
fair.
I mean, like, let's, as a Windwalker, if I detox somebody, let me get a little orb of their chi, pop around on the floor, for me to run over. I am all for, I
No,
do not,
Babs, you take your utility and you like it like the rest of us.
I'm, except for demon hunters and the couple specs that get a little extra, like mages or whatever when in,
Well, Demon Hunters sacrificed their third spec so they could have extra stuff.
yeah, they're really upset about it. I
Oh
can
yeah,
tell.
they're super mad. They didn't
It's
get
really a
their
rough life.
Fellweaver spec, so
Right. I mean, hey, at going into Legion, I looked at them bringing in Havoc and say, okay, let's make Windwalker a range spec. But nobody listened to me.
God. Oh man. So any other Windwalker things that they've done? So much.
I mean, it's yeah. So, there are other things that kind of affect, Windwalker, the weird Pelagos orb situation that nobody's really sure about with the duration
Yeah.
and that like everybody's kind of talking about. Do we put it in our guides? Do we change things about it? Like, how does it
is
work?
that
Why
is
is it
that is
doing
that the
this?
thing where they like increase the buff duration from the orbs or
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, like but the orbs stay on the ground longer, but less of them spawn. It's very confusing. But yeah, so I mean, there's stuff like that that affects Windwalkers a little bit, just like it affects anybody else. There's just the fact that there are still bugs. You know, uh, there are still things for Windwalkers, that don't work the right way. Um, and Mark of the Crane, there's some kind of hilarious silliness to it where you can utilize logging out and other stuff like that in order to keep your stacks.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I mean, I can't promise it's on the PTR right now, but when people were testing it, after they changed, they found that if you logged out with stacks, when you logged back in, you would still have those stacks of Mark of the Crane,
And they
and they
wouldn't
would not
expire.
go away. Like,
Oh.
I'm assuming that's the kind of thing where even if the bug is still in there, it's probably going to be like reset when you start a key. So you'd have to like do the
yes.
first pack, get to six stacks,
Well,
and immediately log out.
Yes, and when I think like if you leave combat, like it was one of those things like if you remember in the past there were specs that like would need to get like they would go somewhere, do something, get summoned back, and you'd pull the boss right away.
Yeah,
Yeah.
or the
It's
ones
kind
that
of
would
like
hit
that.
the radish or whatever it's
Yeah, like that's
Yeah.
basically what you would have to do. It's not like a functional improvement. I think like if you leave combat, to where all of and then all of your stacks fall off. After the time, like if you had 10 seconds left on one stack and that target dies 10 seconds later, all your stacks will fall off if you don't apply any new ones. There was a period of time in the last couple of days where if you just generated 2 stacks on anything, you would go straight from 1 to 6. You would not pass go and collect $200. You would only go from 1 to 6. And that actually was still on there after the patch notes. Um,
oh.
Oh,
as
really?
I was writing the article that you linked, it still existed on the PTR, and then I relogged on the PTR and it was gone. So there's some silliness about that.
You
Going on
know,
the last moment.
it
Fixing
is
things.
as ineffective as many of their fixes have been for Storm, Earth, and Fire. I am actually a little bit impressed at how quickly they can deploy those changes to PTR.
I
Yeah.
mean, I think is we spent Windwalkers have spent so long, crying and whining, myself included, about Blizzard, look at us, pay attention, why don't you care? But it, you know, here's somebody that's doing something. As much as it's hurting our damage and it's going to kill our population, you know, that it is somebody trying to do something. The spec will be better because of these bug fixes.
Yeah, I mean that's Brewmaster had its share of beneficial bugs get fixed in BFA and Shadowlands, and
Yeah.
it sucks when it happens, but ultimately it means that you don't get nerfed for the wrong reasons, and that when there are balance changes that need to be made, they can actually make them instead of it being like Windwalker apparently had bugs that were kind of propping up its
Right.
performance in PvE, and if those bugs went away just by accident from an unrelated change, nothing might have happened. But now, at least, because
Right.
there's so much awareness about it, hopefully, if it does actually translate into major single target damage losses, there'll be a compensatory make up for it.
Yeah, I mean that's the hope. It makes sense. I think it just depends on where Blizzard wants Windwalker to be, more or less. They've clearly shown years of being okay, with it being really, really bad, for multiple tiers in a row. So since it was really good, and even if it moves from just really good to good, are they okay with that, or do they want to see it stay back at really good? For a period of time. I mean, when we came into Shadowlands, obviously there's a lot of um, not taboo, but historical issues, with Windwalker, in terms of people's perspective of it and the community's perspective and whatnot. And it's something that I kind of predicted would need 2 tiers of Windwalker being strong to get better.
Turns out
Um,
all it took was being featured in the world first kill of the last 3 bosses of the tier.
well, right. And my biggest problem with these bug fixes are that they will have completely undone the work that was done then.
Yeah.
Um, because it's not a spec that can be trusted now. It's a spec that when it's strong and people start to want to play with it, they're going to view it as Blizzard nerfs it. Whether it's bug fixes, the timing of it is just exceptionally poor. If they had just waited until 9.1, it would have been better. We would have had more people come, and that would have meant that more people, because there will be people that came because it was strong and stayed because it was fun. But that number would have been higher if this happened in 9.1, and it would make a lot more sense when there's very likely to be more moving parts at that time.
I'm a little bit surprised because this is actually a fairly substantial single target nerf to the spec. that this happens while a lot of guilds are still progressing Castle Nathria. Like this
Right.
change is going in on Tuesday. We are going to be, still raiding next week, doing progression. You're going to be on Sire Denathrius, hopefully killing it Tuesday. We're going to be starting Sire Denathrius, either hopefully Sunday, not Sunday next week. And I mean, it kind of sucks to just lose 5 to 6% damage, like even not accounting for the Mark of the Crane nerfs, just 5 to 6% damage off the top.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's just like, I went through, and I'm sure there's VODs of my stream and stuff, clips of sort, but there was a period of time where I was really down on Windwalker. It just felt like, you know, I started to buy into the hype of, Blizzard actively hates Windwalker. Because I couldn't, after so many years of being called a Blizzard apologist and, people saying that I will, explain away and accept anything, eventually, that wears down. And
yeah,
Nyalotha was that for me. And going into Shadowlands when there was a big period of time where nothing was getting done, it just got worse and worse and worse.
yeah.
So we got some attention. I felt better, but this more or less puts us back to that spot.
Well, on the upside, this does mean that there will not be a whole bunch of DPS players trapped in what we're calling monk jail, which is being the physical debuff provider for the raid, which is
Right.
the situation that a lot of brewmasters are in.
Right. I mean, and it, just like, vengeance nerfs would have a positive effect on the havoc population. The
Vengeance
Windwalker
are getting
losing
nerfed.
damage does open the door a little bit for Brewmaster. I mean, Brewmaster's not in a bad spot.
Vengeance is getting nerfed. Shit.
It's not in a bad spot. It just wasn't,
Yeah.
the same.
Yeah.
Just so you guys are wondering, there's a third monk spec. I don't. It's Mistweavers.
I
I
mean,
don't know if you've heard of
What?
them.
nobody's bringing Mistweaver for their
Wait,
monk
since
debuff.
when?
Just you guys have been talking for a little bit. I
Well,
just thought I'd
okay,
interject and be like, hey, like maybe they'll bring a Mistweaver
I need you to
for
level
a
with
debuff.
me, okay?
That
I need
was
you to
wait,
level
that
with
was
me on
that, right.
like any boss with ads. How good were you at getting the debuff on the ad?
Actually, to be fair, being the only monk in my raid, very good.
Okay.
But
Okay.
that's probably because I was the only monk in my raid. I
Yeah.
learned, particularly with like Ajara, those ads. Imagine my role there on Ajara. Terrible. I had to debuff all the ads, also stun them before they got in the middle,
Uh-huh.
and then ring a piece them out of the middle so they didn't do the middle thing
Right.
suck thing.
Yeah.
That was my role. Literally every pull was a heart attack waiting to happen. But anyway, yes, there is another monk spec. It's Mistweaver. We don't matter because we're still bad. But yeah, continue. Sorry, just want to interject there. Let you guys know. Maybe a Mistweaver could provide the debuff.
Maybe.
But the thing is, then you have to bring like another healer just so you have enough damage reduction cooldowns.
Right.
God damn it. I hate it. I hate it.
Yeah, I mean that's clearly the problem there.
Oh my god, just give revival a DR, it's all we need.
I mean, honestly, just have DR give everybody like a really shitty hot, and while I have the hot, they take 20% reduced damage. Easy game.
Oh my god, dude. I hate people. I hate it.
That would actually be if they changed revival to, instead of being an instant heal, just apply a hot to everybody that does the heal over time, and then gives them a DR while they have the dot. It would be hot. It would be so much better, like unbelievable amounts better than it is right now.
I mean, it'd literally be one of the best raid cooldowns, though. Like at that point.
Well, yeah,
so
what?
Like, it's not like Aura Mastery
into...
hasn't been one of the best raid cooldowns attached to one of the best throughput healers with one of the most utility for the past 3 expansions.
Well, you could you could attach to, maybe it starts out as, whatever, a 40% DR and a 10-second hot, but then every second, the hot ticks down, the DR ticks down.
That's fair.
Like maybe
there's things they could do with it. This is not an unsolvable
down
problem. It's a problem that they have refused to solve.
Like,
basically, is what I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, maybe, but you're still a Mistweaver.
I mean, yes, there are definitely options. I would.
I don't know.
I mean,
right now I am in monk jail because, well, we were gonna have one of our raiders, Meta, was gonna switch from his mage to Monk, but now that Monk's future is Windwalker's future is highly uncertain, we'll say, I am going to probably be on Brewmaster. Which is, it's just the reliable choice. It is just the reliable choice.
I mean, we're not, we have at no point expected Mango to switch off of Brewmaster.
Oh, I was talking with Mango about being in Monk jail, so.
But she's not in Monk jail because I play Windwalker.
Well,
That's true.
So she doesn't get to whine.
Well, she may not get to whine, but she was definitely.
I mean, if Windwalker was bad and I would have to sit out a bunch,
I think this was in
like
the context of talking
Dialotha,
about you. I think you were on your hunter, like, at that exact moment. It was like, oh, Babs is on his hunter. I guess I'm in Monk jail.
Oh, so she, right. I mean, I get that. I can understand the fear of being put in Monk jail. Yeah, for sure. I get that.
That's funny.
But, I mean, if I'm going to play a spec and, for mediocre damage, I want to have to think a lot less than I have to think for Windwalker. And I've been playing Windwalker for 8 years.
Jesus.
So, if I could turn my brain off and play some Beastmaster, or Fire Mage, or, where you just have to learn the order of the buttons, and do more damage and have less likelihood of being,
Alter Time
unceremoniously
actually a really good
nerfed.
cooldown too.
Yeah, it is. I'm just glad it's not an offensive cooldown like it used to be. That was stupid. I hated playing my mage when that was the case.
Funny.
But yeah, no, it's just Windwalker is still my top choice, and I'm holding out hope that in 2-3 weeks, by the time my my Windwalker or whatever hunter or mage, I think my mage is at 56, and right now my hunter's at 51. But by the time one of them is ready to get carried through raid, we'll have more data on how the nerfs have shaken out the bug fixes have shaken out for Windwalker.
Nice. Oh man, all right. That was, I don't know. Is there anything else we want to cover in Monk World? At this point, that was an overview of sorts.
I think
some stuff that
Bad
was
About covers it. I will say I am hopeful that there will be more changes to Brewmaster for patch 9.1. And Windwalker, obviously getting the bug fixes are good. I am, of course, still hopeful that they are going to get, some more much needed work going into patch 9.1. This is a good step in the right direction. We just need more.
Monk diversity.
And at some point, maybe they will fix Revival and or give Mistweaver something silly.
Well, I mean, because it's gone to show that even giving Mistweavers or any spec, i.e. Holy Priest, obscene throughput is not enough if you don't have a DR.
Yeah.
well.
I mean, Holy Priest actually has a second problem, and that is Disc Priest, but yeah.
Well, right. But Disc Priest has the DR.
Disc Priest also has Spirit Shell.
Which is, I mean, to be fair, they've literally cut the legs out of Spirit Shell with the patches, which I know we didn't talk about, but I mean, that people are posting like 10k reduction in shields, right? Which is
Is that going into 9.0.5?
Yeah. Yeah, they changed the formula. So they reduced it to 80%, right? So it was 100.
Yeah.
So the spiritual used to be 100%. It could be up to 100% of the max HP of the priest.
Oh god, our healers are gonna have to
changed
redo
the
all
formula
of their...
to
boy.
80% of a priest's spell power.
Babs,
so technically
Ed is gonna have to redo healing cooldowns for
Spirit, it's gonna be like, it goes from basically you being able to average like 32k shields to like 24k shields. So it's a 8 to 10k reduction in the shield amount,
which works out to a 30% reduction.
Yeah, so it's actually a huge change.
That is very large.
I mean, necessary.
Necessary.
But
absolutely necessary. Spirit Show was super dumb. But
it just doesn't change that the game itself, the way damage is done, is just based around damage reduction and not, damage healing. It's just not.
Yeah.
They have to change the fundamental way that they do damage.
I would totally be happy with a raid with fewer one shots if they want to go that route. Like, if they want to,
that's the answer.
If they want to give us mechanics that like are just absolute metric boatload of damage, but that don't actually like one shot people. Something like Jaina, where the dot just crushed you,
Yeah, it
but
becomes almost inalienable.
didn't actually deal like one shot kinds of damage that things do on basically any other fight that's existed the past two expansions. I still don't know if Mistweaver would be good because of the mana issues. I'm not familiar enough with the healer
I mean,
space.
the biggest issue. I mean, the biggest issue in the healer space today is that while the DR healers do as much healing as the throughput healers, so
Right.
like it
Yeah.
does. Like you, why would you bring like a holy priest when you have a disc priest that does the exact same HPS but also brings barrier and other things? Similarly, like
Barrier, pain
paladins
suppression,
and shamans. Yeah,
and Spirit Shell. Yeah.
yeah, and then you have paladins and shamans that heal as much or more than druids and mistweavers when they also have utility. So
Yeah.
there's a bigger healer meta issue where like Blizzard is just afraid, I think, of giving healers that just do throughput the ability to do more throughput than any other healer, right? Like
Yep.
druids and mistweavers fit that model. Holy priest to a lesser extent, right? But we've never done more healing than we have for half a patch when corruption was a thing. But we were obscenely broken at that point.
Yeah,
At least.
that's a little
Yeah.
bit of a. They
Yeah.
they really cranked it up to 11 there.
Yeah, being able to do what was it, like 500,000 HPS and still end the fight with full mana. Yeah, a little bit ridiculous. But yeah,
Man.
I mean, healing wise, I mean, we won't see any changes probably. Like the biggest changes we'll probably end up getting generally in healer metas are with expansions and not with interim patches. So
Yeah, I mean, I am still holding out hope that we will get some more much needed quality of life changes at the minimum going into 9.1. Hashtag Celestial Brew off the GCD. Like, come on, Blizzard. There's no reason for it. But yeah, I think that about sums it up for the state of monks right now.
yeah, a bit. To be fair, a lot more to talk about in a 0.5 patch than I think we thought. Right? Like
Well,
it's
like
actually
in
pretty
Legion, their
substantial.
0.5 patches were actually pretty substantial. That's 7.1.5 was when they made some really
Oh,
major changes to Brewmaster.
no, don't remind me of 715. That thing almost killed me physically.
The
That was
7.1.5
awful.
changes, that's where they initially, the change that they, oh, what was the initial change that they made? It was something really stupid that I can't remember. It was putting some ability that we have on an absurd cooldown, and that, like, just like that was the change. Because the issue at the time was that Brewmasters could have 100% uptime on Ironskin Brew and then actually just carry that.
Yep.
Like, you could hit 7 minutes of Ironskin Brew, like, in 2 minutes into the fight, and then just purify the rest of the fight. So they were trying to fix it. And that's why we have Blackout Kick now on a fixed cooldown that isn't reduced by haste. Because that's the change in 7.1.5, that one of the changes that they made to help fix that.
Well, and I mean the reason that I groaned with the mention of 715 was that the changes were done on Friday and the patch came out on Tuesday. So I have very specific memory of spending about 20 hours. I think it was about 20 hours that weekend,
Jesus.
writing articles, figuring, theory crafting the changes. It was an absolute disaster. It literally
That sounds
almost
like my
killed me.
that sounds like my experience with that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it just it almost did me in.
Which I guess credit where it's due. They've done much better about getting changes on the PTR in timely fashion this expansion. We haven't been shocked by the oh, Friday before the raid opens, here's some changes on PTR. They're coming Tuesday. Have fun.
That's true. That is true.
I mean, I am here talking about bug fixes that we found on Wednesday and were not announced until Friday.
Okay, so maybe not quite
So
as good.
Yeah. They also did that big rework to the rogue, one of the rogue covenant abilities. I think it was
All right,
Thursday.
so maybe not
Yeah.
credit where it's due. Maybe
they're
the
really
credit's
not doing
due.
as good as it seems.
No.
Okay, maybe it just seems that way because Brewmaster didn't get any change.
Yeah.
Well, and it's just because that they're isolated. It's not, like 715, like everybody got some type of changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This was more isolated to a couple specs,
That's
but no
true.
less ridiculous.
Awesome. Awesome.
All
All
right,
right. Well,
well,
I think
is it
it's time. Is it Q&A time?
I think it is.
So it's time for my favorite part
So
of the show.
we've got 2 weeks worth of questions.
And we do. So, oh God, break it out. Of course, it's question and answer time. It's my favorite part of the show. The rest of the show doesn't matter because I don't get to talk about anything. But now we get to talk about
It's the
questions and
Mistweaver
answers.
curse.
No, I'm kidding. So you guys can submit your questions, of course, to Emerson or myself. We will answer them. They literally can be about anything. We've answered some interesting questions in the past,
We have one on here
particularly.
about Daft Punk.
We
Hey,
do. We started off with Daft
Yep.
Punk today, but we also have answered questions in the past about what is an appropriate topping on pizza. Pineapple works, but in a very specific case. In any event, let's get into the actual questions we have. So the first question tonight comes from Soji, and they ask, saddened by the news by Daft Punk splitting up. So this was actually a question for last week, but about 2 weeks ago, Daft Punk essentially called it quits. Um, so their question was, what are your guys' thoughts on them, and what was your favorite song by them if you have any? So what about you guys? I listened to a lot of Daft Punk uh growing up. Just in general, I loved their music videos. Like the
their music
Interstellar, was
videos
it
are wild.
Interstellar 555? What was the name of that one? I was just looking this up actually. But the actual like video they put together for for their album was amazing, like mind blowing. Um, so yeah, so I have a soft spot in my heart for them. Like loved Random Access Memories. Followed
Actually,
their
I
like sort of.
just picked that up. Like when I heard, I hadn't thought about Daft Punk in years when I
Oh
heard that
really?
they were breaking up. It's their music has always been something I enjoy, but never quite in my wheelhouse, or at least like the kind of thing that I heard while I was in high school. Um,
Right.
Yeah.
and I picked up Random Access Memories kind of on a whim, and like I actually really, really like that album more so than I liked some of their previous work. And yeah, it's I like it quite a bit, and the Daft Punk kind of aesthetic is always appealed. I've always liked that more than I like their music, which is
Yeah.
not that their music's bad. It's just that they kind of really nailed the aesthetic.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like I said, listen to them basically through high school. Yeah, Random Access Memory was good in just terms of like them changing their sound. And yeah, I mean, in terms of like favorite song, I think my favorite song is probably Harder, Better, Faster, Stronger. Just in terms of
Classic.
like it's been used in totally different ways. Like there's the YouTube video of the person who writes all the words in their hands and then does the hand
Yes.
dance, which I think is super cool. There's their music video, of course, for it, the official one. There's just a lot of like, I don't know. That's probably my favorite song by them. Um, but yeah, I mean, I think Daft Punk has been, at least for me, like I listened to them, and I liken them to a lot of what like Avicii went through in terms of his sound, right? So Avicii started out in like sort of like the dubstep era of like EDM and sort of changed it and sort of brought it to where it is today, which is sort of that like melody, like mixing now vocals in and sort of that, which is what Daft Punk did with their Random Access Memory sort of final album. So yeah, I mean, I love them. Huge fan of them. I still end up listening, and actually, I just actually finished watching the movie probably got like 2 months ago, just randomly.
Yeah.
So yeah, no,
Yeah.
I was a huge fan.
I Daft Punk, I've always, very similar to you, always loved Daft Punk. My question, my first thought when I heard this was, how can anybody be sure?
That's true. That is the
Because
other thing. Yeah.
the whole thing is they don't, they always wear the helmets. How can anybody be
Well,
sure it hasn't just been different people across the years?
someone has to sign the contract with the label company.
But they can be. Like there's no reason to believe that the people in the pictures are actually the people making the music.
It's
It's
true.
electronic music. You press play. Like there's literally no reason to believe, you know, that 100% that it was actually them.
That is
Yeah.
awesome.
I just, to me, if a couple years from now or whatever, if Memoirs of Daft Punk is released, 30 years from now, and after whatever they die of old age, or I don't really know how old they are, but they could be multiple people, so who knows,
Yeah.
you know and like years from now, and if that comes out and if they're like, oh yeah, we actually haven't performed in years, we've been using body double, like the Blue Man Group, it's not the same three guys every spot on the planet. I've seen Blue Man Group in concert a bunch of times. It's not the same dudes. There's no reason to believe that Daft Punk is anything different.
That's hilarious.
I think this could be a fabulous publicity stunt.
I mean, it could be. We will never know,
Yeah,
but that is a good point. That is a good
but I
point.
mean, my favorite is Around the World. That's my favorite
Oh,
song.
that's such a good.
It
That's
holds
such a
the
good one
record for
too.
the fewest number of actual words for a song that reached number one.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's
Well,
interesting.
Because it's
literally all
just
they say
around the
is around the
world.
world. It has 3 words, and it reached number one on the
Babs,
Billboard
are
chart.
you sure you're qualified to teach? Oh wait, no.
I don't
Around
think
the around, I was thinking it was 4 for some reason. I'm apparently not qualified to teach.
Are
Let's
you?
move on to the
Are
next
you
question.
qualified to teach? God, they let you run a podcast? This podcast has gone to shit. Who is in charge of this stuff?
It's true. That is true.
But yes, no, it's only 3 words. And it's like
Yeah,
the comparison to that is like that to like Bohemian Rhapsody
yeah,
that has like 400 unique words or something like that. Like if you count like the, Galileo and,
yeah.
Scaramouche and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
Around the World has 3 words and it reached top 1. It was very difficult for a song to reach number 1 on the Billboard charts with less unique words in it.
I
So
mean,
like I love the
it's
song, but
really
just
at
that
some
fact.
point, like the lowest you can go is 0, right? You can't have negative words in a song. So at some point, someone's gonna chart with an instrumental.
No, but then that would be instrumental. Like you
Yeah.
have to have at least one.
Okay, so there's one. So somebody's gonna chart, and the only word in it is probably. Let's be honest, it's probably gonna be fuck. But
I mean, I think Umbop probably got closest. They could have just said Umbop for a number of minutes, and probably would have been just as successful because that song was not successful because of the lyrics.
yeah,
But
True.
it's
That is
it's
true.
not it's on like it's in like a whole other category of its own. Like no other song has even come close to having that few words and having reached number 1 on the Billboard charts. It's fabulous.
The music video for Around the World's interesting too, where they like walk around
Yeah.
and like each like group of people walking is a different part of the beat. So I don't know. It's cool.
Yeah.
Um,
All that stuff, like they kept music videos alive for such a long period of time, I think.
yeah, that was interesting. All right, Soji, thank you very much for the question. We're gonna go to the next one here, which is from Hursty, and they ask a simple one: Team JUCO or Team Abe?
I mean,
So is there
obviously,
backstory to this?
I have
obviously
no
it's
idea.
Abe.
I
Like
don't.
Abe
I
is the
don't. I
correct choice
literally.
here. Sorry,
It's
Juco.
probably coming from Windwalker chat, maybe. Like I
Probably
don't.
coming from Windwalker chat.
Yeah. But
I don't
why
know.
is Abe in Windwalk? Who lets him in there?
He's everywhere. I always look. I'm Team JUCO, even no matter what. I'll be completely honest with you. But I have no backstory other than that was the question that was asked. So.
Yeah.
So I'm going with
Team
Team
Abe.
JUCO.
Apparently, Anam is Team Juco. And I'm assuming Babs is probably Team Juco
I mean, why would you assume I'm Team JUCO?
because he's a Windwalker.
So there's
Yeah,
a
we'll go
word.
with that. Sure.
2-1. Peak podcast has spoken. It's Team JUCO. It's the winner. God. All right. Thank you, Hursty, for the question. I have no backstory. I have no idea what that was about.
So Abe's got a question. I think this is directed specifically at you, Anam.
It is actually. Yeah. So Abe asks, are you, assuming me, gonna play Mistweaver in 9.1's raid? If not, are you gonna give up your admin spot? And if so, to who? It's a very loaded
Well,
question.
it can't. If the criteria before you answer, if the criteria is playing Mistweaver in raid, it can't be Abe because he's raiding right.
That's
Right.
true.
I don't
So
think that's mean to say.
no. So my plan is to still play Mistweaver in 9.1 if I can. We'll see. I will have a paladin, of course, ready. If not, am I gonna give up my admin spot? Probably not. I mean, I'll still update everything for Mistweaver. I'll still approach the raid like I'm a Mistweaver. So I don't know if I'm giving up my admin spot for that. And if I was going to give it up, though, guess who I'd give it to? It's actually a pretty easy choice. I give it to Dobbs. He's the only person I trust.
I think
So
that's
I
fair.
lose track of the Mistweaver admins. Garg used to be the Mistweaver admin.
Uh-huh.
Okay,
June,
no,
yeah.
I always get that mixed up with Dobbs. I don't know why. Probably because I don't hang out in Mistweaver chat, and I don't know why. They're this Dobbs and Garg are the same person in my.
Very different.
I mean, there was a period of time that I thought Living and Dobbs were the same person because they were the same guild and all that stuff. Like anytime they spoke, they like spoke from the same perspective. It was very weird a couple of years ago.
Yeah, when Living joined BEG.
How do you know they're not the same person? Like, this is
I've
this
never
is the
seen
Daft
them in
Punk problem.
ranks
You've never
together.
seen them in person. Like, they've never taken their helmets off.
No,
Right.
I've seen Living's. Living's got
You
a big
have,
old
but have
fro.
you?
He's got a big old orange fro going on.
That's actually sick.
I've actually never seen a picture of Dobbs though, so they could be the same person.
That's true.
But yeah. So Abba,
Maybe
yeah,
they're
no.
Daft Punk.
What?
Maybe they're Daft Punk.
They could be.
maybe the
Could
Daft
be.
Punk was in peak all along.
Yeah.
They could be. They could be.
Maybe that's why Daft Punk broke up. Shadowlands came
Right.
out.
It's true. It's true. Dobbs are doing a new guild.
Windwalker was good again, and they just couldn't keep the music together.
Oh man. All right, Abbe, thanks for the question, maybe. Okay, so next question is from Anzarao.
You got it there. That's the right one. You got it right.
Is
Don't
it
say it
the
again. I'll
bird
screw it up.
from is that the name of the bird from that BC dungeon?
No, that's Anzu.
Oh, okay, shorter.
I don't know who that. Yeah. But yeah, Anzarao asks, when it comes to simming gear upgrades, patchwork is best. Is this also true for conduits, or would it be better with say like cleave add 60% uptime on one ad and one boss when determining which of these we ought to use for a raid?
So I don't think it's correct to say that patchwork is just like blanket best, and it's not going to change with conduits. What changes is what kind of fight you're looking at. So if you are expecting to spend a significant amount of time on a boss, then it's probably worth trying to figure out what kind of the damage profile is for like priority targeting. Something like Stone Legion General, you want periodic AoE damage. It comes in bursts. So you want to figure out, okay, how can I maximize that? As opposed to something like Sludge Fist, where it's really you want to play around single target damage, basically, so it's like patchwork. If you really want to get fancy, you could try and set it up to figure out how to do it in 1 minute intervals, but that's not really something that is very easy to do in Simcraft. So it's not something that I would say, and Babs, you probably could weigh out, you know more about simming than I do, you could probably weigh in on this. I don't think it is something that depends on like the conduits outside of a couple that just straight up don't do anything.
Yeah, I mean for Windwalker, it's conduits are super straightforward. You just take.
Brewmaster only has one conduit basically, so
Right. So I mean, yeah, I mean in regards to simming, it's kind of a long-standing question. Patchwork is the default. Because forever, going back to the original patchwork, boss damage is for most fights, very few fights break the mold. But boss damage is what's most important. So we look at a patchwork fight or stuff like that. We look at a fight where you're not you doing mechanics essentially. Where a fight might have downtime or fight might have mechanics, because in an ideal world, the effect of those mechanics is small.
yeah. That's a large part
If
of like being good at playing DPS is making the effect of actually successfully, like you always have to do the mechanics successfully, but the
right,
best players are going to minimize the impact that has on their DPS.
right. So I mean that's a big part of the reason. And like I said, just because it's more straightforward. You always need boss damage. That's nothing is going to change that fact. The fight ends when the boss's health goes to zero. Padding on ads or whatever is good. There are ways to simulate that. Certainly when looking to simulate a fight like Stone Legion Generals, I simmed looking at 4 targets or 3 targets, 5 targets, whatever, over a 10-minute span. Because there's pretty much on Stone Legion always 2 or generally almost always 4 targets for you to hit. And all those targets kind of have to die as quickly as possible. But that's not the case in a lot of fights.
Yeah, that's pretty rare. And even if you look at some of the oddball fights we've had recently, things like Kael'thas, for the DPS, like sure there's ads, but that's not actually how Kael'thas played out. The thing that matters on Mythic Kael'thas is the shield.
Right. It's
You
it's a
have to
single
break the
target
shield.
burst damage, over
You have to
you know,
put the shield
whatever the
and you
time
have to
is.
kill the boss before you get the
Whatever
shield,
the
and you
time
have to
is.
kill the boss before you get too many shields, because if you're committing cooldowns to the individual shields and you get an extra one that you weren't planning for, you're just gonna die.
Yeah, I mean, and the ads just get melted by everybody automatically.
Yeah.
You know,
The ads have no
it comes
HP.
down to the vanquishers. It comes down to you know, the shade and stuff like that, and how
So yeah,
your group responds to that.
there's things like Huntsman, where there's just constant 2 targets stacked,
Sure.
and things like Stone Legion General, where it's pretty constant 2 to 4 targets, with some DPS stops thrown in, but pretty constant 2 to 4 targets. And then there's, even in those situations, you're not going to be doing something that's vastly different from just playing the single target setup. Maybe with, a conduit or talent switched out that happens to perform slightly better when there's 2 stacked targets at all.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, and the reason we use patchwork, you know, is because ideally you're not losing damage or uptime based on raid mechanics.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Well, awesome. Well, thank you, and Zarau and
Come on, man, you
Zaru.
can do it.
I'm terrible at pronouncing things. Thank you for the question. All right. So next up, we'll pull one from actually the Twitch chat. So we're doing this one live, and then we'll have a final question here in the Q&A. So the question coming in from Munch Shadow or Munches had
Yeah,
Haddo.
that's males in our
Yeah,
guild.
males.
Yeah, they ask, what's the best rum?
So I don't know if you two have opinions on this. I don't have super strong opinions because I've been a broke grad student for the past half decade, and that limits your options. But a couple of them that I like. There's one that I found that's pretty cheap. It's around $20 a bottle. Called Dorley's rum that you can get. That's, you can't get it everywhere, but like Total Wine sells it, so it's not that hard to get. And that's a pretty good. That's what I get by default, basically, because not super expensive, and also I like it quite.
Interesting.
So I think is specific.
I mean, to me, like rum is a mixer. Like rum's not
Oh, I'll
anything
just
you
drink
drink
this.
by itself. So
Like, and it
literally,
depends, because
it
if you
does
get
not
like,
matter.
if you get like
There,
Captain Morgan or
there is
something,
not a
I'm not gonna
best
drink
like
that. That's a mixer, because
there,
it's just
but it doesn't. You're never gonna be like, you know what? I'm really thinking about some rum on ice on the rocks, maybe rum neat. Like no one says that because rum you put in Coke and you drink
okay.
it. So
That's fair. Like rum and Coke
the
is legit.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, I'm somebody like when I was in college, rum was my drink. Like you know, that if we were going out, that's what I got. You know, for my 21st birthday, my parents bought me a bottle of this really nice dark rum.
Nice.
Mhm.
You know, so rum has always kind of held a special. I'm not a big drinker, and even in college, when I was a big drinker, I wasn't a big drinker by college standards. It was
Yeah.
just a big drinker for me.
Yeah.
You know, but rum was absolutely my go-to until my senior year when I pretty much got alcohol poisoning um, at a gymnastics competition. Well, not at, but after a gymnastics competition.
Did you win the competition though?
Hell no, I was terrible. This was club, man. No, that you go to the competition just to go to the party afterwards. Um, but yeah, I didn't even make it out the hotel. Uh, so
Jesus.
you know, clue or you know, hint tip, hot tip for anybody listening, any of you college students, don't do shots based on hotel cups. They're not the same size as a shot glass.
Holy shit! No, they are
Yikes.
not.
Yikes.
So I went through an entire 750 of Bacardi Gold in about 2 hours,
Ooh,
plus about 4 shots of tequila and half an hour in a hot tub. Which
Jesus
also don't
Christ.
go in a hot tub unless you want to get idiotically drunk.
Yeah,
So I
I've
didn't
done that
make it
before.
out. I was throwing up. I reasonably had my friends been responsible human beings and had we not been, you know, we were in Michigan and I went to Penn State. So were we not in Michigan, probably should have gone to the hospital. But after
Jesus.
that, I still haven't. I think I've had rum like once, and
Yeah.
I graduated in 2011. So
Yeah. That's the kind of thing that it happens, and you never ever touch it again.
yeah, like
Like,
I could be around it now and smell
yeah.
it, and I could drink it if I want, but I don't have any interest in drinking it.
Yeah.
Like
Interesting.
one night I went from it being my favorite drink to it not being. But if I had to pick my favorite from back then, it was Gosling's. Gosling had a really nice, super dark, like they're really dark. It's like black, not like Kraken. Kraken's garbage. That was like overhyped garbage. But like Gosling has a really nice. There's a cute little seal with a ball on the bottle. Really nice dark rum. That was my favorite in college.
I went to St. Croix on vacation once, and the rum there is very cheap. There's a cruise and rum distillery on the island, and getting rum punch at the bar is cheaper than getting a bottle of water. So I
Oh
spent
yeah,
a lot of time drinking rum, and we did like a sunset cruise, and literally it's like we did it with like my friends. It was like 6 of us went on the sunset cruise, and normally it's a boat for like 20 people. We were the only 6 on the boat, but they made enough rum punch for normally 20 people. So there was 2 like Gatorade thingers that they dump on people's heads full of rum punch, and the guys are just like, "Dude, you have to drink this. Like, we can't drink it because we got to operate the boat. We already kind of paid for it." So literally, we're like drinking like basically like between 6 people. Like we drank all this, and then we stumble off the boat and end up in a restaurant with the crew from the boat still, and we start doing more shit. Like I had
nice.
calypsos are amazing. They're like
Yes,
frozen.
I like calypsos.
They're like basically like it tastes like coffee, but it's rum and frozen. I don't know what it is, but I was just drinking those all night. It was a great time. In any event, I have no idea what the rum was, but it was cheap. So that's my point. Rum as a drink, I don't care. It goes in Coke. It can be in a frozen
Yeah.
mix thing.
You know,
I'm cool with
Yep.
it.
so Pau Q asked the question: As masters of brewery, must know our brews like the top shelf of a bar. What brand of beverage do you like, and why? And
Well, it says so. Hold on, Emerson.
Okay.
The question
Do you
says,
douse your
"What
enemies
brand of
in?"
beverage do you
Sorry.
douse your enemies in, and
Right.
why?"
And obviously, you just use the thing that's most flammable.
Right, which is
No.
Vladimir vodka.
And cheap
It's
too.
Everclear, isn't it?
Yeah, but that's not cheap.
That's
That's not
true.
cheap. Vlad is cheap. It is garbage. Nobody wants to drink it voluntarily, and it's absolutely flammable.
Yep.
Interesting.
And
See,
I mean,
I was not going.
brewmasters are drinking some of the beer, but I mean, by the time you're getting punched in the face by a literal god, does it matter what you're drinking anymore?
No, I mean I would be throwing gin. To be fair, like gin is a terrible alcohol. Just get rid of it.
Now,
Just,
see, for me, gin's a mixer. Like I'm okay with but mixing it with other alcohols. Like
I have no idea. Mixed drinks are not my forte. I was just gonna say though, one of the things that's nice about rum is actually that it's cheap. Even in the United States, it's cheap. At least compared, like
I like tequila.
I grew up in Kentucky, and so Kentucky bourbon,
bourbon.
and
I've been to the Bourbon Trail.
bourbon is real expensive by comparison.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like it's good, but it's not that much of a price premium good. Holy shit.
I was
Well, that's like I don't really like bourbon. That's why I like tequila. Like, because I feel like the distance between like low quality and mid quality is not super expensive. But if I want if I'm okay with spending a lot, like the top quality tequila has that big jump that bourbon does.
Yeah,
Whereas bourbon kind of I think has a
it has a
like
much
it's
higher floor.
yeah, yes, yeah, that's really the big problem. And I think whiskey and bourbon and all that stuff are just garbage liquors.
You're gonna make some enemies who
Yeah.
not
oh my
me
god.
because not that I necessarily agree
Heart.
with you, but I'm not a huge fan of either. So
Like, I mean, there's a reason that like the stereotypical like whiskey, is like an old dad sitting on the couch with the glass, with like,
Literally,
I'm
one
pretty
ice
sure
cup in
that's
it.
actually
Like,
100% because Jack Daniels exists.
yeah.
probably.
But that's like there's a reason like notice he has nothing else going on. His only option right now is sipping whiskey.
God, dude,
It's
with
not a choice. It's just what he has left. That's what
can't.
it takes for me to drink whiskey.
Oh
I'm
god.
pretty sure Males is gonna plan a
So I
coup in the guild now.
I mean, that doesn't affect my team. Hi, bye, buddy.
God. I will say that whiskey isn't like even like scotch in general is an expensive habit. Like I had to stop
Yeah,
drinking scotch because the problem there is like similar like with a very nice tequila, there's definitely a taste difference between like a
yeah.
lower tier scotch and a higher tier scotch. And once you taste the higher stuff, you kind of want to start to spend like $150, $200 a bottle. that's not very sustainable when you're drinking like 2 to 3 bottles a month, right? Like
Right.
Yeah.
six to $800 in liquor a month is sort of
That's a little
tough to
that's
budget for.
Right.
not enough of a blue blood for that.
No,
Like my father loves whiskey. When I got married, we were picking out, the drink package and stuff like that, consulting my dad because he, drinks a little bit more, more than I do, which is a low bar.
yeah.
But I didn't really care. And he was like, dude, get whatever you want, get the cheapest package, whatever. I'm gonna bring my own. Like, so we okayed it with the venue, all this stuff. And like I find out like after he spent, like, just because it was my wedding, he did the same thing with my sister. And when my next sister gets married, he'll do the same thing. He bought like a $400 bottle of whiskey,
That's
and
awesome.
his best friend, who is going to be at all of our weddings because I grew up with him, and all of his kids and stuff like that. Like, the two of them, that's all they did. They just, that whenever they
They
wanted, they would
split that
go to the
bottle.
bar, and that bottle was only for the two of them.
That's
And
amazing.
like,
Not even for the bride and groom.
no, absolutely not. No, because he knew I wouldn't drink it because he knows I think whiskey is a garbage liquor. But
Oh my god.
like the thing that, all right, my biggest thing with whiskey, right, is the people who really like it are worse than wine snobs. Like when a
I
wine
don't
snob
think
tells me,
that's even a little bit close, but okay.
like when a wine snob is like, "Oh, taste this. It's fruity. It's got this blah blah blah." Like, and I sip it, I taste what they're telling me. When somebody who loves whiskey is like, "Oh, taste the oakiness of the barrel and the real smoke flavor." I don't taste that. I taste garbage and
That is
anguish and
awesome.
pain.
I mean, that's because like when someone tells you a wine is fruity, you know what fruity tastes like because you can go
Right.
and buy Neapolitan from the grocery store.
Yeah,
Or
but you know what
any other there's
Right,
smoke
but
like when
that's
there's
like,
but like
smokiness in
smoky
it, there's like a
barbecue sauces,
burntness to it,
like
there's
that's
like
a
a
thing.
nuttiness to it, like
The thing about the different barrel types, like people talk about like the oak versus different types
the
of barrels. Like I definitely understand that one because like how do you know it tastes oaky? And you know it tastes oaky by literally having drunk a lot of bourbon or whiskey to know
well,
or
yeah,
what
like,
because they're
oak
mostly oak
barrel
barrels,
tastes
yeah.
like.
or trust them. Like, if somebody could say, "Oh, this tastes oaky," and I'll be like, "Yeah, okay, dude. Yeah, I guess you're right. Sure." It could taste birchy. I don't know, like whatever other options are. But it's
Uh,
just like in my opinion, like when people buy really nice whiskey, expensive whiskey, it just tastes worse to me as it gets higher quality. Tequila, rum, gin, vodka, those taste better. I get the better taste with the more expensive. Whiskey to me tastes worse.
interesting.
Like, in my friends knew in college, if we went out, I almost never threw up or got sick or was hungover, but they knew that they could give me one shot of whiskey and that was it. I'd be throwing up. Like, I could drink, I drank a lot of tequila in grad school, tequila sunrises, all this stuff. That was my drink. We'd go to bars, nice fruity, you know, feminine drink. I'm all about it. And but my friends knew if they could get me drunk enough that I would consent to a shot of some type of whiskey, Jack or Yukon, whatever, that I would then be vomiting that
Yeah,
night, and they just thought it was hilarious.
that's awesome.
Yeah,
I've
I
learned so
was
much. I've lost so much respect in the past 20 minutes.
I've never I have never been one to actually get drunk. I think there's like one time that people in guild have seen drunk Emerson. There's one time, and even that by a lot of people's standards is not like drunk. It's like noticeably tipsy drunk.
Yeah.
I've never been one to drink too much. But then I also recently ended up in the hospital. Not for drinking, but it was like one of those things that contributes to it. So now I drink a lot less than I used.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's like, even when I was at the height of my drinking, I had one blackout ever. I'd have friends that would do it 3 times a week,
Yeah, I
like,
mean, in fairness to you, that does sound like some of the people I knew in the phys ed department at UK. So
I
yeah, I
feel
mean,
bad. I mean, I used to black out a lot.
yeah, I mean, that's listen, when I turned 18, right, my family, we went to the Bahamas. We stayed at Howard Johnson next to, on Paradise Island, next to the Atlantis, whatever. and because you get you pay less because you're not going to Atlantis, but you get all the amenities. It was
Yeah.
great. And that was the first time I was 18. That was the first time I ever had liquor, and it was rum. And so I really liked it. Then when I got to, I just didn't care enough. Like, so I would go with my friends out in college before I was 21. I just didn't care enough to drink.
Yeah.
So I would be the designated driver, and I would have so much fun fucking with my friends.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like,
Screwing around with drunk people is a blast.
and we would adapt all the drinking games. Like the big thing was, um, like if we were playing a game, we would set rules to when I could use the bathroom.
Oh
And
boy.
like anytime they would have to take a shot or something, I would have to drink a whole cup of water. So like I'll tell you, after an hour and a half of drinking, tons and tons of water and not being able to go to the bathroom, you get pretty silly and delirious.
Yeah.
So I would it would be essentially the same thing until I could go, relieve myself. So, nowadays I average probably less than one beer a month.
Yeah.
Like we have wine still from our wedding and we've been
Like
married for 5 years.
my family, neither of my parents drink basically at all. Not even for like big events. So I was the first person in my immediate family to actually really drink, and it was when I went to college. And even that, by college standards, was ludicrously low. You want to know my drinking habits in college? There was this pub near campus that every Wednesday would do an event where they would bring in some new craft beer from the area, and they would you paid $10. You got a pitcher, and I would go with some buddies from where I worked, and we would get two pitchers and order a pizza because they also actually had fabulous pizza, absolutely. Not like actual bar food, bad pizza, really good. Um, and that's it. Actually, that's all of it. Is going there, and
You get
two
it's like
pitchers for
so
like four people.
there was a God, I feel like such a weirdo because like to me that story is like there used to be a bar by me that would do 10-cent wings and
Yep.
250 pitchers,
Yeah,
and I'd go there and I would drink $30 worth. I would eat and drink for $30 by myself. So that's
yeah.
like 4 or 5 pitchers and just pounds of
I don't.
wings.
I
Like
have
that
no
was my
idea how
Wednesday
someone
night.
could drink four pitchers of beer. Like they had to have been smaller pitchers than what they were giving us.
It depends on the beer too.
I
Like,
guess. Like
Yeah.
like
I
I
mean, I
grew up
was
in
drinking.
Pennsylvania, so everything is Yingling.
okay,
Like I can't drink 4 pitchers of Yingling, you'll
yeah,
explode. It's just too many calories.
Yeah.
yeah,
Like you can't drink 4 pitchers of Guinness. You'll just physically explode from, the calories. Like
Yeah.
a light beer, then sure, or like a Blue Moon or a, you know, uh, something light. You
You guys were
you could
drinking
easily
nice
you could do
beers.
that.
Like this was like Natty Ice,
yeah,
Yeah, no,
Keystone.
see, I skipped all that because
yeah.
by the time
Same.
I started drinking,
Absolutely.
I was 21 and could just buy whatever I wanted.
And
God, man, I lived too. When I found a bar, I still remember this to this day. It was my sophomore year of college. There was a bar 2 blocks over that we never went 2 blocks over at my college because it was sort of the rough area of town. But there was a bar there. They had PBR on tap. We're walking in, seeing it, and just being like, "This is my new home. Like I am going to live here." And like literally, there was a point in my life where I spent like it wasn't every night,
yeah,
but it was like every other night we sort of hung out there.
Yeah, I mean
the
and I think part of that is growing up in Pennsylvania because like when I would go to not a big
Uh,
party, but a bunch of my friends, we would go out, we would buy Yingling. Like we would
oh
buy
yeah,
more expensive stuff because Yingling is like, the state beer of Pennsylvania. So
yeah.
it was everywhere. It's really good. It's still my favorite beer, and like that was just,
And that's
we
like
would pay more.
I skipped straight. Like I went from nothing to craft beers because of
Yeah.
God,
how
you
I
guys
was
missed
drinking. So
you
like,
guys missed out being like 16 years old, having to like pay
Yeah.
somebody's older brother to get you like a 30 pack of like Keystone because you're scrounging together like $30. Like, what can we get for $30 between the four of us?
That's
And
well,
they
see,
get
and my sister did that. Like my sister and I both started drinking at the same time, and she's 3 years younger than I am. So like I was home from college, and she's like passed out on the couch after like her first real like party enough that she had to like call my parents to come pick her up because she was too like
Yeah.
like just annihilated. Like, so I remember coming home that day, like, what happened to you? She's like, oh, I'm like, oh,
Ooh.
okay, I get it. Like,
That's the way it is.
because like
That's the
I
way it
had
is.
just done that a couple days before, but like, we both started at the same time, and she was 3 years younger than I was.
That's so funny. Oh man, it's a long drinking.
But
Jesus, it's a long drinking conversation.
I mean, it is a good one.
It's funny. I
But
don't
that's
to be.
like to talk about like when you mentioned the beers. Like when I was at Penn State, there's a bar called Mad Mex, and
I assume they had like Mexican.
oh yeah, for sure. So, and my initials are MM as well, right? So I love alliteration. Like it is a long-standing love of the linguistic concept, the literal concept of alliteration. So I could not resist it. And Mad Mex on Mondays, had Margarita Madness. So it was,
We're going deep on these
oh,
M's.
yes, that was a big deal. I couldn't resist. My friends knew that was my weakness. We'd be out there every Monday. But they had $5 margaritas and they were huge,
Oh,
and they had $1.50 tacos. So
That
after,
sounds
I
great.
said I did club gymnastics, and there's a national championship and all that. So, a couple of the guys would train, and girls would train and stuff. After that was done, we didn't care. We were all seniors, we were graduating, it was whatever. So we would go every Monday and we'd drink for like 2 hours. We'd spend like, I don't know, $15, $20 each and drink. And then we'd go to gymnastics practice. And like, I'll tell you, like, never having, I mean, I can't say for sure because I've never driven drunk, but the people who do it tend to think that it's the safest thing in the world. But jumping on a trampoline after 3 large margaritas is absolutely the most dangerous thing I've ever felt like I've done in my life.
Jesus,
So
it sounds dangerous.
It
do
really, I mean, just jumping up and down. And then you try and do a backflip, something that I had done for a decade up to that point, and it just felt like the most dangerous thing in the world.
That's
I
awesome.
mean, that sounds like the kind of thing where you try and do it and then you lose the margarita partway through the.
No, is it like that was I held it in, but it was just like, you bounce and you're like, "Oh, okay, I can't do anything crazy." Like no twisting, no doubles, no nothing. Like, all right, let's just try a nice simple backflip. Okay, don't bounce too high. Let's just, okay, ready and backflip. Okay, that was way too much. We're not doing that again.
It's like, oh, it's like, whoa, okay, we
Yep,
got one. We're
I
good.
did it.
Practice over. Done.
Yep. Time to go sit down. You
Yeah.
can have your turn. I'm gonna go sit down next to the trampoline.
Oh my gosh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, I never did the whole drinking and working out, but speaking of tacos, I went to Drexel, and coming off of the frat row, right? There was like a row of all the frat houses. Walking back towards the
Yeah.
dorms, there was a food truck, or not really a
Mm-hmm.
food truck. It was like the tiny food trucks, right? Like it's a food like for one person to stand in there and make food, and it was a taco place. And the dude sold tacos starting at like probably midnight or 1 a.m. till like 4 a.m. And basically that's where I ate pretty much any night at college, like walking back from a frat party was like we
Yeah.
stopped there. And like I'm pretty sure like the guy only operated in cash. I never had a lot of cash. So I'd give the guy a 5 and I get one taco back. But I'd watch other people literally hand him like 20s and he'd be like, all right, here's 2 tacos. And I'm like, do you guys realize like you just paid $20 for 2 tacos? Like the sign says they're $1 each, or they were like $1.50 or something like stupid dumb. But yeah, that was the one thing I remember about walking
It's
backwards. I
one
was
of
like,
those ones
stop the
where
taco
the sign
truck.
says $1.50 for a taco, no change.
Yes, basically. So like I'd watch it'd be like, who's 20? And they'd be like, oh, 2 tacos. They're like, oh yes, 2 tacos.
Right? Because you're not. It does at that point. You're not there for the money. You're there for
No.
the tacos,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you don't care. Like,
for
That
the
guy
sweet,
had to have
sweet
made
sustenance
so
of
much money.
tacos.
Holy crap.
exactly.
There was a place
Exactly.
near campus at UF that had Taco Tuesdays that had fabulous tacos that I used to go to all the time.
And there's no such thing as a bad taco. So
There is such a thing as a
I
bad taco. I have had it, but
I don't really
these were
like
not.
Taco Bell tacos. I
but they're
like it like
cheap.
most other taco. Well, that's. I'm older now. Like I the cheapness doesn't satisfy anymore.
You don't like literally going to Taco Bell and be like, here is $60. I want a mountain of food because
Anam, we've already
No, like
established that your eating habits are very different from a normal
I
person.
would, I, I would just rather go to like a Moe's or Chipotle and spend a little bit more and get higher quality.
I just Taco Bell is a special place in my heart because that's where like I remember I had a cousin that got her learner's permit and she used to always want to drive. So when I would drink too much, I'd call her and be like,
Nice.
I'm gonna walk to your house and you need to drive me to Taco Bell and I order you and your friends whatever you wanted. So like there would be many a time I'd like wake up and look at like my credit card and be like, why did I spend $60 at Taco Bell last night? Like, first of all, I don't remember going. And second of all, how do you spend $60 at Taco Bell at 1 a.m.?
Then like
So
eventually you look at your credit card statement, you're like, why didn't I go? Why didn't I spend $60 at Taco Bell? What did we do last night? Oh
yeah,
my
I'm
god!
like, what happened? But yeah, that was my go-to.
God, I
That's
might
why
go and get Taco
Oh,
Bell now. I
Taco Bell.
shouldn't, but
So
What's
we had a Are You Hungry in State College,
I've,
which is
I've
a
actually
Rutgers thing, but
I've been there. I've been there. I
yeah.
like that
So
one.
Are You Hungry is like the best because it's for anyone who's not familiar with it. It's originally a Rutgers thing, but Rutgers is a dumb place, so I'll take credit for it. So I went to Penn State. It's a thing, but uh, and you went to Drexel, which is fine. You didn't say Temple, which is a
Yeah,
problem. But
exactly. Yeah.
yeah, Drexel is fine. I had a friend that actually I think is still
this shade is like
Drexel's.
too northeastern for me.
Yeah, I had a friend she went to Drexel for field hockey. She might be their
Oh,
coach
nice.
now. I can't remember, but yeah, whatever. But yeah, so I like Drexel. I'm okay with Drexel. And but yeah, so for anyone who doesn't know, Are You Hungry has these what they call fat sandwiches. They all have names. There's the fat bitch, the fat blunt, the fat dog. My favorite was the fat mojo, right? So the fat mojo is a sub, like a hoagie, blah blah blah, 6 inch or so. It's got 2 chicken fingers, 2 fried eggs, 4 strips of bacon. Um, what else? Ketchup, mayo, pickles, 2 cheeseburger patties, American cheese, and as many French fries as they can cram inside the sandwich. And it is
Wow,
literally the most delicious thing I have ever eaten in my life,
that sounds
except
like
for like
the
meals at Disneyland.
that sounds like the kind of thing that I would have once and then promptly fall over.
No, it's so nice. You portion it out because like half of it you're good. So you cut it in half and you eat half now, half later. It's only like 7.50. Like when we would go out after I graduated, we'd go out because both my sisters went to Penn State as well, and we would go out and on the way back we would stop at Are You Hungry and I'd buy like 6 sandwiches and then just eat them over like the next 2 weeks because like it was like a drug. I like had gone through withdrawal for not having them after I graduated.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that it was just like it's just fried food on like
Yeah.
sandwich buns that didn't belong together, but somehow went together when
Uh-huh.
it
I
was
mean,
so good.
fried food is like a class of food that it doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. They all go together.
Well, and it was great because if you could just make
Okay,
your own sandwich, and if
I'm
they
gonna I'm
thought
gonna
it was
pose
good,
I'm
you
gonna
could
pose one more
put it on the
question,
wall.
and then we're gonna call this show good because we're already close to 30 minutes over our typical time, which is already long.
I mean, this
Favorite
is what you
fried
get
food.
for bringing me on.
Favorite fried food.
Favorite fried
Favorite
food?
fried
Yeah.
food.
Okay, it's not a traditional, but funnel cake.
Okay.
Okay.
I love
Funnel
it.
cake is probably my favorite fried food.
Like, so are we talking like dip fried or like does wok frying count?
Up to you. Like I would let's go like deep fried. Like
Okay, like
something
deep
that you would
fried.
dip
Like
fry. Yeah.
oil,
Something
like
you
oil
like
bread, like
Okay.
oils
putting
and
it in a
flour.
wok and like stir frying it, not the same kind of thing. That's totally
Well, I
different.
was gonna say like egg roll. Like egg rolls are like
Yeah. Oh,
something that is fried. That's like my favorite thing that is fried.
okay. Okay. Egg rolls.
But
We'll go with
like
that. It's very actually on theme, so we're actually gonna stick with that.
yeah, I mean in terms of deep fried, fried Oreos are probably my favorite deep fried thing.
I have never had those.
I don't recommend it.
That's
They are
Sound bad for your health.
simultaneously my favorite and my least favorite. If you eat like 3, you're good. If you eat 4, you feel like you're gonna die.
Uh,
yeah.
But they're freaking delicious. But you just feel like the worst possible thing after.
That's carnival. We call that carnival food, where they just
Yeah.
fry everything. Yeah.
Yeah.
Love
Yeah.
that.
Gotta say, I
Okay.
have a soft spot for fried pickles. Not had those.
No, yeah, I like that.
They're very good. I had those for the first time after moving to Florida, and I
I
need
mean,
to find some place here. I don't own a deep fryer, and I'm not going to buy a deep fryer because I do not need one, and it would be very bad for my health.
nobody really needs one. All it does is fatten you up and then burn your house down.
It's true. It's
And
true.
but I do need to find a place that I can get some.
I mean, I know when I went down to Florida with my friends in college, we had fried frog legs in Jacksonville. That was really phenomenal.
I had fried gator.
I was really fried gator is also very good.
It's not as
But
good as fried chicken, but it's acceptable.
yeah, but we had fried frog. I can't remember the name of the place, but it was in Jacksonville. We stopped in Jacksonville on the way down to Orlando, and we were like, man, this like let's just try fried frog, and we were like, damn, this is awesome. So it may have
Can't say
just been
that
the place, but it was really good.
I've never had fried frogs. I stick to fried dough. That's about the extent of my experience.
Okay. I mean, there was dough around the frog.
I mean, okay, cool. I get down with that.
Well,
Get down with that.
I think that is going to just about wrap up our show today. Thank you all for coming and hanging out and watching the show and or listening to the show. As always, it's actually been too long since I've done this, and now I'm fried. But
Now
as
you're fried. I get
oh
it.
my god.
But ching, we'll be here all week. Thank you, Emerson.
Be sure to pay your server.
Try the veal. It's the special.
Try the fried frog.
Okay, we're done now. If you enjoyed this, we definitely enjoyed this. If you enjoyed this as well and you want to support it and the other work that we do over at the Peak of Serenity, such as all of the theory crafting that has gone on for Mistweavers and Windwalkers for the past couple of weeks, you can do that over on our Patreon at patreon.com/Peak of Serenity. And as always, we super appreciate your support. Whether it's financial through the Patreon or by coming and hanging out and watching the show or coming and hanging out in Discord, any way you want to be involved in the community. But that is, after an extra long episode, going to be it for today. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.